Greetings! Welcome back once again. This is Emunah Yisrael, affectionately known as the First Lady for Debate Talk for You. We appreciate all the listeners, male and female, who support the Relationship Challenge and our newest edition and sister show, Under the Palm, Hebrew Women Speak. So sisters, if you have something to share or desire to be featured on the Debate Talk for You platform, please send all requests to underthepalm2@gmail.com. Once again, ladies, that's underthepalm2@gmail.com. We appreciate you and hope to hear from you soon. Peace and greetings to you. This is Emunah Yisrael, affectionately known as the First Lady of Debate Talk for You. I have enjoyed coming to you week after week, season after season, growing together, speaking about the difficult topics, investing the energy, time, and effort with our brothers and sisters on the panel. Today, I would like to come to you with an opportunity for you to invest in something that I've been working on and that's near and dear to me. It's called the Yummy Cottage. You can learn more about it at www.gofundme.com/the Yummy Cottage. We're currently fundraising so that we can get it off the ground, and your help would be appreciated. Once again, www.gofundme.com/the Yummy Cottage. Check the link in the box and hope to hear from you soon.
Don't touch that dial. You're now listening to Debate Talk for You Radio.
Hey, what's going on, family? How you guys doing? Welcome to another show. You're now listening to Debate Talk for You Radio. We are back once again. It's week number 2, y'all. Week number 2 of season 9 of Debate Talk for You. It is Monday once again. If you missed the show last week when the world premiere of Debate Talk for You came on, make sure you go check the archives. Go to youtube.com/Debate Talk for You and check out the shows. However, today we have Under the Palm. Under the Palm is back right here on Debate Talk for You, hosted by Mayana. Let me bring her on. Welcome to the show.
Shalom, shalom, everyone. I'm really excited to be back. I have an amazing panel that I get to introduce to you once again. This is our second season, hallelujah, of Under the Palm, Hebrew Women Speak. And just as the title suggests, you have an amazing panel of Hebrew women who will be discussing some of the pressing issues in the community. And tonight, that issue is magic. And so we gave the title of When Black Girls Need Magic. And we'll talk a little bit about why we chose that title. But before we do, of course, I want to give all honor and praise to the Holy One of Creation for allowing us to return. I want to also encourage all of you who are listening that if you like the content, be it our show or the Relationship Challenge or any of the other shows, Man Up, The Lion's Den, The Hot Seat, and the like, to remember to donate to us. Anything that you have is more than appreciated. We have 2 very safe ways to give donations, both PayPal and the Cash App. So by all means, we appreciate your contributions and your donations. It keeps us on the air. It helps to pay the bills. So for all of you who have already donated, thank you so much. What I'm going to do is, before I go into too much of the topic, I want to bring in the panel, those that have come with us. I don't believe the EMAs are here yet. For those of you who have been avid listeners of the program, you know one of our features is that we have the elders with us, and I don't think they're here yet. So that's Ema Naami and Ema Yehudi. So if you are on the line and listening, remember to press 1 so we can bring you into the conversation. We are always so privileged to have the elders weigh in on these conversations. So what I want to do is bring our panel in, because we have a new panelist this season, and I cannot wait for you to meet her. So I'm going to begin with the oldies but goodies, our original home panel in alphabetical order. I'm going to bring Sister Emunah. Sis, introduce yourself to the people.
Hey, shalom, shalom. Erev Tov, everyone. Good evening.
This is Emunah. I'm here. The computer hates me. Sending crazy things, but don't praise me to the Most High, the Holy One of creation. I look forward to this conversation as we continue. Thanks for having me once again.
Oh, thank you for coming. It's always a pleasure to have you. For those of you who don't know, Emunah is the host of the Relationship Challenge, which aired last Monday and will air again next Monday. And it's great to have her here as a panelist and contributing member of this discussion. Emunah, do you want to say something briefly about some of your projects? I know that we probably talked about it during the Relationship Challenge, but if you want to very briefly give the people a little something.
All right. I feel like I've been in gestation and giving birth over here. I realized that the litbomb.com, I haven't posted over there in, 9 months, but I was able to make it for this show. So it was a run-up article to this conversation, speaking about some of the things we're going to touch on tonight. So definitely don't read it while we're on the show, but afterwards you feel free to go over there to litbomb.com and read the newest upload, as well as the Soul Center, the-soulcenter.com. We have a lot of information over there, courses over there. Shout out to Sister Only Love, Sister Mayana as well, who are over there putting forth information that can help the community. And so definitely go over there. And if you're local, I know if you're local, we're doing the Yummy Cottage, and that's what has really taken a lot of my attention at this time. But all praise be to the Most High. Things are always moving, and I like it when it's moving. So I look forward to the discussion.
Kay, for those of you who do not know, we have had an academy of sorts up and running for a number of years. It's called the Soul Center. And it's been a one-man show for a very long time. Emunah putting up content, putting up information the way that she always has. Some of that information has been readily available, even free at times. But go over there and support. A lot of the courses are either very, very reasonably priced, or I don't even know. We might have one or two that are still completely free, but they may not be anymore because of we have to pay the bills over at the Soul Center as well. There might be a course by me up there still. I don't recall, but I know, and I want to welcome Only Love to the faculty over at the Soul Center. So please, by all means, go ahead and check that out. In fact, I know that I said I would go in alphabetical order, but since I've already mentioned Only Love's name, Only Love, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you've been involved in, and maybe something about your time at the Soul Center?
Shalom, Mayana. Shalom to all the sisters. It's good to be back. I feel like it's a reunion. And welcome to our new panelists. And I want to give honor to our imams that are signing on soon. But my name is Only Love Chica Alston, and I'm the founder of a teaching ministry called Prophetic Whirlwind, Uncovering the Black Biblical Destiny. And we do courses on Hebraic womanhood, especially Hebrews in Africa. I usually weave that into all the topics. And so Sister Emunah was so gracious to offer me a spot at the Soul Center for 2 of my courses. So I'm excited about that. And read the article on lip balm, and that was great. Some projects that I'm working on, finally, I feel like I have a birth that's like delayed. But finally, Prophetic Whirlwind, Uncovering the Black Biblical Destiny. The book is available for pre-order and will be dropping in November. And in that book, I chronicle 15 African tribes that have Hebrew origins, and also uncover the Hebraic history of African Americans here, and then kind of put that all together for what it means for us spiritually moving forward. So I appreciate all the support, and I'm excited about that coming out. And we have a class coming up about the Wailing Women in Jeremiah 9 and the Mourning Women tradition in West Africa. So that will be on Lip Balm soon. But I'm just grateful to be back here with my sisters and with new sisters. So shalom, everybody.
Thank you for that. Welcome back on A-Levels Gates. And you know what? It is like a reunion, maybe for the people in the audience, but I know I've seen you and spoken to you and Oni Malaka and, of course, Emunah every single day. So this is just a lot of fun to have you back on the air and the ability to share you with the people. And so hallelujah with that. Speaking of my Oni Malaka, Malaka, go ahead and greet the people.
Shalom, shalom, everyone. First, I'd like to just give honor to the Holy One of Israel, my Redeemer, our Redeemer. Thank him and praise him for making it possible to be together again. And I'd like to say shalom to all the sisters. I give honor and respect to the Emunahs as they are getting on the line tonight. I want to thank everyone for just being who you are. I get to interact with you guys in different ways during the off season and during the on season, and I'm telling everyone that's listening that these ladies exactly how they sound on the radio. That's how they are in person, just grounded and loving and helpful and cooperative, all of that. So I wanted to start by saying that. And I just wanted to greet everyone and say, I'm Malaka, and for those of you who know, I like to pray. So you may have come across some of my prayer challenges. I do prayer challenges online. And I'm the lady whose, head is covered and she's bowed down and maybe even crying. So that's me. I like to cry.
Kiana, if any of you are plugged into the Matrix or Facebook, then you have very likely run into some of Mother Malaka's prayer challenges. She's up very, very early, entreating to the Most High, giving petition on behalf of the people, praying with the women, praying on behalf of the nation. And so you're encouraged to tune in and make requests or pray along. Again, her name is Malaka. You'll find Angela Malaka. You will find her on Facebook, and you're encouraged to tune in and be a part of some of this petition and returning to the Creator. The wailing of the women has commenced now. Without any further ado, our very new panelist, a sister who is known to many of you already because she has her own internet spaces, her own social media spaces where she is very active and very vocal. Her name is Shika, and we are thrilled to have her with us. So go ahead and greet the people. Introduce yourself.
Thank you. Shalom, shalom. And I am so honored to be on a panel with all of these wonderful women who have definitely made their mark in it's also as vocal as I am in spaces and able to have my back while we're on the threads and we're on the videos. I'm Chika Atiba. I'm out of Dallas, Texas. I'm an educator. I co-host, the page Christianity on Trial. We also have a YouTube channel where we did a summer series, and Sister Mayana and Emunah joined us to speak about different issues concerning the state of the Israelite woman. And so, again, I just want to thank the ladies. Thank you, Sal, for having me. Appreciate you.
Now, for those of you listening in wondering, where on earth is Shanti? Don't worry, Shanti is still with us. She's still with Debate Talk for You. You will get to speak to her and our brother B.A., I believe, a little later this week. Have we missed it already? I don't know, but I know it's on a Wednesday. Check out the flyers. We'll definitely be promoting it. It may be this Wednesday, and you will meet Ashanti on her own show with Brother B.A. I believe it's called The Second Quarter. So look out for that, listen out for that, and, of course, tune in on Wednesdays to meet with Ashanti and B.A. B.A., of course, has his own show. Yep, I had confirmation that it is, in fact, this Wednesday at 8 p.m. East, 5 p.m. Pacific time. Again, the name of the show is The Second Quarter, and it's co-hosted by Shanti and B.A. Ben Abraham, who you may know from another Wednesday segment called Man Up. So I don't want you to think that Shanti fell off the block. She's definitely still putting in that work, and she's definitely here on Debate Talk for You. Having said all of that, having said all of that, while we wait for the EMAs to join us as their schedule allows, I'm going to go ahead and open up the conversation. I'm sure some of you have seen it and wondered, what are we talking about when black girls need magic? And the reason I chose that title is because I have issues with some of this language, the idea of black girls being magic, this kind of attaching magic to the things that are practical and necessary, and that there's a lot of difficulties. The idea of blackness is another word. Those of you who are familiar with my own writing and my own contentions, I have contentions with the word black for a number of reasons. I might touch on them during this conversation, but I'm going to open up the floor so we can get our sisters to weigh in on this concept. So to begin, I have a few questions. And I'm very, very honored to have these women with me as we parse out and unpack some of those questions. Emunah knows this. Sometimes we'll talk together and be like, I got questions. No matter how many conversations, how many books we read, or how many conclusions we come to, we always get back to the part where, I have more questions. So I have this question. Why do you think that these ideas of enhanced womanhood is so alluring, specifically to melanated women? And if I need to clarify that question, I will. But again, the question is, why do you think that these ideas of enhanced womanhood is alluring, specifically to the melanated woman? And I'll give an example. We have whole theologies or thinkings around the melanated woman being some type of goddess, or the melanated woman being somehow magical, the idea of the melanated woman being a super woman. And they're like, why is there so much language of enhanced feminine or femininity or enhanced womanhood? And are those necessary? Why are they alluring? I will open that question to our newest panelist. Sheikah, what are your thoughts?
I'm sorry, I was on mute. My thoughts are that basically what happens is that we do have so much stacked against us, per se, like, you're not, the public perception might be, you guys are not pretty, you guys are too masculine, you guys are too this. And sometimes it comes from within our own community. But yet, even while that is going on, black women are still raising children, black women are still obtaining their degrees, buying homes, doing all types of things. And it's like, how do you get the strength to continue on, being that we don't have people to really depend on along the way, but ourselves? A lot of black women depend on women, and we have to keep ourselves going. So I think it's just, on a positive end, it is that you're overcoming so much. On a negative end, it's that it's something, some force is giving them the ability to succeed in ways that others would find ordinarily stressful and impossible. It's the same thing with success. When people see success, they attribute it to the Illuminati. Oh, they're successful, the Illuminati. And it's really not always the case. I mean, I do believe somewhat in that. I'm going to go into that conversation. But some people are just successful because of their hard grit and determination. So I think that, and sometimes it's also a reflection of what we believe, that something has to be supernatural in order to be fulfilled, in a sense. So I'll leave it at that. But that's how I see it, both negative and positive.
Thank you for that. And I like that you brought up the concept of not just natural but supernatural, and the idea that there are so many things that melanated women specifically are going through and have issues and obstacles that are stacked against them. And to prevail even over those circumstances, one would have to almost be, in the perception of many, supernatural. These conditions are not natural. In order to overcome them, one must be supernatural. And as we continue the conversation, we're going to look at why women may possibly get caught up in this idea of the supernatural or outside of themselves. So, Emunah, what are your thoughts about this magic, this black girl magic? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I took the liberty to look up what became a social movement, and I agree with what Sheikah said. By the way, Sheikah took a lot of what I was thinking, and I looked up this hashtag that was Black Girls Are Magic back in 2015, and how the wind took it and it became a thing. But again, it's something that was already within, and again, so-called black girls, but something that was already in the culture. As Sheikah said, the ability for the melanated female to still be here and still not operating to the best of her ability, but still operating to the best of her ability, meaning not able to reach her fullest potential because the majority of the things that she needs is not provided. You know what I'm saying? But she's still here. And so that thought of making something out of nothing and then making it look fly and making it look desirable, again, the mind will say, well, how is she doing that? And just like you said, Sister Mayana, one would have to say, well, then this is not of this realm. Her ability to do this is not of this realm. It must be, quote, unquote, magic, right? And so that's what I would say in the opening statement. It has to do with historically, especially in the West, where she's coming from and her stick-to-itiveness, let's say, her ability to still be here.
Interesting, because I heard plenty. Obviously, you said a lot, but one of the things that stood out for me is that once someone can't understand it, then it must be magic. I think I want that to be a point that doesn't get lost, because I think we're going to be revisiting that idea several times during the course of this conversation, that we see something that happens, and then because we don't understand how it could be, we associate our unknowing with this thing being magical. Sister Angela, you've done some research and writing and the like, and I want to get into some of the things that you may have studied and some of the things you may have concluded about this particular line of thinking. But for now, what are your thoughts about Black Girl Magic?
I think that it's closely linked to kind of a white supremacist ideology that impacts us more deeply than we realize, and that is the belief that a lot of whites have that black people are these mythical creatures. Although they may, it's a very weird dichotomy, because although they may tell themselves that we're inferior to them, they still worship us in the form of athletes, in the form of singers, in the form of actors, actresses, etc. And so I think that what happens is they assign these mythical characteristics to us because they do recognize that we are, we seem to win so often when we really shouldn't be winning. We seem to overcome when, something lesser might have crushed them. And so they assign superhuman or supernatural attributes to us as people. But again, it's tied to the belief that we're not quite human, whether it's that we're inferior to them or whether it's that we're beyond what is normal. It's still a way of dehumanizing us. And I think that just like we take lemons and make lemonade out of it, we've taken this thinking and we've owned it. We've embraced it, and we said, you're right, I am a goddess. You're right, I am this, I am that. Because we find that as a way of empowering ourselves, is to embrace that supernatural, the concept that we're supernatural. I could say more, but I think I'm going to stop right there because I don't want to go over into other things that you may be preparing to ask. So I yield.
Another great nugget in that, what Sister Malaka is sharing, this idea of self-empowering and the extents that we go to in order to accomplish empowering oneself, the agency that comes with being able to define. This idea, the power to define, the power to redefine, the power to create and craft and own an identity is one of the hallmarks of civility, of humanity, of power. And so having a whole movement where women are seeking to adopt or embrace an idea that, as Sister Angela said, makes you mythical. It makes you a mythology. It makes you a fiction. this idea of superwoman, for example, and I'll just add a little bit of my thoughts here before I bring Only Love into the conversation. Superwoman is not, although the idea is already a comic kind of idea, but there is no such thing as superwoman. There's no superwoman anywhere. And so this idea of, we even have Karen White who wrote a song, I'm Not Your Superwoman, women thinking, oh, they're superwomen. There's no such thing as superwoman. All they ever gave us in DC Comics was Supergirl. There's Wonder Woman, and then there's Supergirl. There is no superwoman. So even our fictions are fictions. There's nothing there. And Wonder Woman, if you do some kind of interrogation into that, is actually just a personification of domesticity, which Emunah and I did an entire series on domesticity and the cult of true womanhood and the like, which is just another way of reimagining the feminine in a masculine space, through a masculine lens where the woman is intelligible. So he can make sense of her. So these women get created in a way where the man can make sense of her. Sister Only Love, what is your perspective about the social movement, the hashtag, the black magical girl, black girl magic?
So, first off, I just want to say, all praise to Yah, because many times we do attribute what seems impossible to man or to magic before we give Yah the praise. And Yah, greater is he who's in us than he who's operating in the world. And so Yah is the reason why black women, so-called black women, or I'm going to say Hebrew women, have endured so much, and why our people have been able to endure so much, even though a lot of times it was things we brought on ourselves. But I don't like the term. I don't like the movement. I think you just see a hashtag, you just see this award show, you don't think of anything of it. But then when I started to observe how many, so-called black women are going into witchcraft, you almost wonder, with the power of words, something that we think is flattery or a compliment could actually be tripping us up in a very deep way. And when you all were talking, I was reminded of some research I did a few years ago on this Black Madonna or Black Mary, mother of Yeshua, that's worshipped throughout Europe and Poland, even by popes from early church history. And a few days ago, someone asked me, how can Catholics worship these Black Madonnas but treat black women so badly and treat black people so badly? And so it's really a trick bag when you begin to believe this black girl magic stuff and superwoman motif, because many times people are just giving you lip service and almost manipulating you through their words into enduring and taking on more and not complaining. And it almost reminds me of like this whole Black Madonna phenomenon. But I remember when I was studying for the state social work licensing test, with the official test prep book, it told us the DSM-4 literally has in it that African Americans can withstand high levels of pain that other groups of people cannot. And so when you even have therapists being trained that pain is something that we can endure and we're these super people, that means they actually have less therapeutic empathy towards you, even when they're treating you. And there's studies about doctors not listening to black women dying in childbirth, because when people think you're this magical creature and this Black Madonna, they actually don't give you basic human empathy. And I think we need to turn any praise for our endurance back onto Yah. So that's my thoughts for now.
Agreed. And what's another important, and I love that there are so many nuggets in every one of your responses. Sister Only Love talking about this kind of sense that because we are mythical, magical, otherworldly, that we're not susceptible to pain. Right, and because of that, and because as all of the ladies have said, all the sisters have spoken to, we have to some degree bought into this mythology that we don't look for help. One of the things that supposedly makes the melanated woman so super is that she's not asking for help. that she's stigmatized out of believing that it's okay to have weak moments. And then she's penalized for not having weak moments. She's too strong. She's aggressive. She's vicious. Why can't she be softer? But then we don't give her permission to be soft because she's magic, and she doesn't feel pain. So she can't go to the therapist and have a conversation and say this hurts, because what magical being has that kind of weakness? And we see that, as the sister said, it plays out in the medical practices. It plays out as we stigmatize mothers who have postnatal, women who have depression, women who simply don't feel like they can do. Why can't you do it? All the other black women can do it. Then there's something wrong with you.
Mhm.
And this is a problem. So I'm sure that when you first tuned in and you heard, why is everybody banging on Black Girl Magic? That was great. That was so empowering. That made me feel good. That was coffee in the morning for me. And now you guys are, pooing all over Black Girl Magic. I'm going to tell you the other issue I have with this phrase, and it's with the word black. You see, all of us are kind of stepping very carefully around the word and not using it and using other words in its place. And that's because if you listen to some of the people in the community and they address this word black, they say that there's an aversion to it because it's a crayon. It's a color in a crayon box, and it's not in any way accurate in terms of a person, in terms of complexion or hue, and so there's a problem with it just on the basis of color. For me, that's not the issue. For me, the issue is that this is not a comment on color. White is also a crayon. White is also in the crayon box, and nobody's really having any. Although a lot of us are rejecting black, we're still calling the other group white, which is still a crayon also in the crayon box. So to really kind of look at what's at play here is that when this group began to call us black, it was not a comment on our complexion. They knew what complexion they were looking at. They know their colors. This is a conversation about morality. As the sister was saying earlier, it's a comment against our humanity. It's saying that we are the black people. The people that get blacklisted, blackballed, the ones that get denied, the ones that are in this dark space. This is not a conversation about our complexion. This is another effort to dehumanize us, to make us not worthy of compassion, because we are the black people. And then what do? They then call themselves the white people. They're the good guys, the purveyors of justice, the protectors of all things righteous and clean and pure. They are the white people. And then taught us to call them the white people. So even as we become awakened enough to say we are rejecting this the notion that you put on us of blackness, we still haven't dissociated from calling them the white people. What makes them the white people other than the fact that they declared it to be so? So this is if you want to talk about trickery, sorcery, and the like, then it's when you can convince the people that they are of this negative energy and then call the people that have given them nothing but negativity and abuses good. Woe unto those that what? Come on, sisters, I know how that verse go. Right? Woe unto those that call evil good and good evil. No? And so we find ourselves in this place where language is important, naming is important, understanding what these words mean becomes very, very important. As we continue this particular conversation, talking about how words conjure concepts, how words influence things, we see this is going to have a lot to do with this conversation. Language is important. How we understand and conceptualize things are important. What we accept becomes important. The knowledge of good and evil becomes important. How we pursue it and what we do with it becomes important. This word magic, there may be some of you that already know that magic, the word magic, is very closely tied to a more familiar word to those of us who have read the Bible of Magai. So does anybody on our panel, does the word Magai mean anything to anybody on the panel?
Mayana, can I just interject really quick about the blackness, like for just 30 seconds?
Sure.
So I'm happy you said it has nothing to do with complexion, why you reject the term black, because when I entered the Hebrew community, what I found was a lot of people who hated anything dark, hated anything African, using the Hebrew term to run away from that. So I'm happy that that distinction was made, because I will use black from time to time because I think darkness is great. So I literally took an implicit bias towards things that are darker or people that are. And so I'm happy you made that distinction, but there is a large segment of the Hebrew community who hasn't done the research or thought about why they're rejecting black. And with not saying black, they also don't want to think about Africa at all. And in this conversation, some of the traditions and rituals people are doing, they will say, oh, I'm doing it because now I'm a Hebrew who's proud of the continent. And I'm rejecting, and I'm not those Hebrews who are not proud of the continent. So I just want to emphasize that part, and I hope the audience heard that you said it has nothing to do with complexion or darkness, but morality. I just want to underscore that, because there are a lot of Hebrews who haven't researched, who haven't thought it through, and they're not rejecting it for the reasons you laid out. They're rejecting it because they have a hatred for anything melanated, whatever word we want to use. They don't want to be associated with it. So I just wanted to give that piece of info, because I'm sure when we go into other parts of the discussion, some will accuse us of rejecting the continent because we may not think everyone should do certain rituals. So I'll get back the mic, but just wanted to interject with that and underline.
I appreciate that, because we are going to be looking at the continent quite somewhat. We're going to keep tapping back the continent, so it's good to lay down some framework, because there is this kind of, I don't really want to touch that. Let's not talk about Africa. There's still this Shemite-Hamite divide that people really parse through yet. And so as we begin to speak about the continent, I think that it's important that we do touch on, there are very important definitions that need to be established, very important distinctions that need to be understood. But while I have you, does the term Magai ring any bells for you?
No, it does not. So I'm looking to learn.
The Magai.
It does.
Is that Angela?
Yeah.
All right.
Magai, the term reminds me of the three wise men.
Oh, the Magi.
The Magi.
I'm sorry, y'all. Sorry. The Magi doesn't ring a term.
Who were studying the stars, and as a result of the stars, believed that a king had been born, and were in search of the king and found Yeshua. So that's what the term reminds me of. Good.
I'm so sorry, Mayana. Yes, I know that term.
Some people do pronounce it Magi, so my pronunciation of the word may have thrown you off. I accept that. But, yeah, so we do find that this familiar term kind of gets sanitized in theological spaces. And the fact that the word Magi or Magi is where we get magician and magic from. It's one of the words that we get. If you look at the plural of magus or magus maybe, and the word by itself, if you're just looking up the word, you will find the word sorcerer. And it's very uncomfortable and awkward when you go back into theological spaces to discuss the Magi or the Magi and then have to look at them in terms of sorcerer, because then the question becomes, was it sorcery that announced the birth of the New Testament Messiah? And then there's a whole other host of conversations. And so what I'm doing here is looking at, it's not to stir up anything and say there's something sinister happening in the New Testament. Instead, it's having to do with looking at definitions, finding it in context, and realizing that some of the things that we approach, because it sounds in a context that's unfamiliar, because we don't know it, it becomes magical and dangerous. Magical and then by extension dangerous, simply because it's something we don't understand. But like in the context of the New Testament, the same word is glorious. It's something that you would welcome. You're excited about it. There's nothing nefarious about these men because they are announcing the birth of someone that's anticipated with great joy, with great welcoming. And then this is for the Hebrew community or even the Christian community. This is an idea of a savior. So this is not something that we would shun because it's a very good announcement. So the idea, so what I'm showing here, what I'm hoping to usher into this conversation is context. And to what degree does our familiarity or our proximity to the word, how much does that affect what we think about the practices or the practitioners of certain things? So, Emunah, since Sister Only Love and Sister Malaka may have also brought up, and that you wrote an article recently pertaining to this conversation, I really want to bring you and Sister Malaka into the conversation about the research that you've done. So in terms of the research, have you found that, I noticed that you took the time to define a lot of words, to give the Hebrew of a lot of these words. Why did you feel that it was necessary to use so much defining and definition in the article?
Yeah, that was a lot, right? I thought I was turning it into my Hebrew teacher or something. But what I found was that the English translation doesn't do it justice or wouldn't allow you to connect the dots in the way in which the Hebrew did. And so personally, what I shared was a bit of how I study things that are interesting so that I can see connections. And what I found in the Hebrew, that a lot of the words that varied in English had the same root in Hebrew. And it goes back to this concept of nakash, which appears in the beginning in Genesis. And so I was able, and it took me, 4 weeks of, not straight, but 4 weeks of going back and taking time to source through the information to have certain aha moments about the prohibitions in Deuteronomy 18, where the Creator's having these prohibitions against essentially ascertaining knowledge on unlawful ways, which would be divination, which would be from the dead, which would be, and then that this word nakash, as I shared, has different meanings, whether it's a verb, a noun, or an adjective, right? And the nakash is who beguiled Eve in the beginning. You understand what I'm saying? And so this idea of magic and it being or divination being what aided, depending on how you interpret Genesis, aided humanity to go off course. And so that
do you have it in front of you? Can you briefly tell us the difference between the noun, the adjective, and the verb form of the nakash so that we can see that? Or I can come back if you don't have it in front of you.
No, I have it in my head because now I was like, wow, for real. So the noun portion, which oftentimes it's being interpreted as is, and again, but let me preface, because you have to give sources, right? So there's this biblical scholar named Michael Heiser, and so when I was like 3 weeks into the article, I'm like, man, something about this nakash, the fact that it keeps coming up is bugging me. You know what I'm saying? So I go continue researching, and I come across some of his research of why he thinks that this word is being interpreted as one way, but more light can come on the subject if you look at the different ways in which this nakash can be translated. And so as a noun, which it usually is translated, it simply means serpent. But as a verb, it means divination, and this is what we see popping up in Deuteronomy 18. When you see the word nakash being there, a whisperer, a diviner, someone who's into divination, it's the same word. And that was really my question, like, why is nakash here and it's not talking about a snake? That's it as a verb form. And as an adjective, it can mean shining. Right? So that like opens the whole, you know what I mean? You're like, what in the world? And so there's a question of who was she really interfacing with in the garden, and why the Most High is so stringent against interfacing with whomever in certain ways to try to get information. Because it was all about information in the beginning, and those prohibitions are about information in the end. How are you getting it? Who are you getting it from? And for what purposes are you getting it? And so hopefully that was helpful.
Excellent point. We're going to get back into this idea of information. Very often this idea, there's all these arguing and debating about what was the fruit on the tree. Was it an apple? Was it a pomegranate? I heard at some point it was a pineapple. It was very, very interesting ideas about what fruit comes from a tree of the knowledge of good and evil. You know, if you ask what tree came from a pear tree, the answer is very quickly a pear. Apple tree, an apple. Orange tree, oranges. But a tree of knowledge could potentially give you pomegranates, apparently. So it's very interesting that we're talking about information. We're talking about knowledge. We're talking about the use and misuse of knowledge. And so we'll probably be getting back to Genesis, too, which you know is like my home turf, and I love it. But before we get to Malaka, I'm going to bring Sheikah in, and then we'll go to Mother Malaka and have her drop some jewels on the research that she did in this area. Sheikah, what are your thoughts?
I like that you guys talk about information. Lately, on our page, we have been talking, and people are bringing forth information. And when they bring forth this information, it may be that somebody didn't have the information or they heard something of it. And so sometimes I think that we talk so much about information and we talk so much about research, which I feel is all good. You have to keep on seeking, knocking, and asking. However, sometimes we research ourselves straight out of faith, you know. I know that when I go through my research, and I do so diligently because I want to seek, knock, and ask and know the truth. I feel like I've been bamboozled, led astray several times, you know, already. And so, therefore, that is why the research is important. But where does faith come in? Where does the fact that we believe that the Most High is in control comes in? And so while we exchange information, and I really do believe in exchanging information, and not only about the word, but also about our daily lives and how to do things and get things done, which is something that in our community we lack. If you just went out and obtained something, how did you do that? And why are we not talking about it? So the exchange of information is great. The exchange of data is also great. The research is also great. But we also have to include the component of faith. And without faith, it is impossible to please him. So I would like to see discussions with the information and exchanging the information, but also with the inclusion of faith.
Thank you for that. And we're definitely going to get into some of these issues of faith, these ideas of faith, and what part faith has to play in practicality and practical application. Before we do, though, let's go ahead and bring Sister Malaka into the conversation.
Oh, okay. Well, you know, I did do a post on Facebook that got a whole lot of attention and a little bit of heat. And basically, I posted about a particular type of thing that I see a lot of women in the community doing. And I won't say that thing yet, just because I think you might want to wait a minute to go there. But I made a post about it, and I got a lot of responses and a lot of reactions from it. But what I discovered when I was, kind of researching and forming my stance on it, what I discovered was I agree with this idea of seeking knowledge. Any lack wisdom or lack knowledge, that they're to seek Yah, and He will provide that. He said He wants to instruct us. And what I found was that we as a people, Israel as a people, have a history of seeking knowledge from prohibited sources, from the garden forward. I won't say, Israel. I'll say Israel, from the forming of the nation forward. But mankind, humanity, from the garden forward. And so what connected to the seeking of knowledge is the acquiring of power. And so I believe that what we're seeing when people are seeking knowledge from prohibited sources is they are seeking a way to empower themselves apart from how Yah has already deemed fit to empower them. So I think that's the issue. That's the issue. Like, am I trying to be my own Elohim? Am I my own God? Is that what my end goal is? Am I not satisfied with how he is moving or working in my life, to the extent that I need to take matters into my own hand and seek some other source so that I can then do what he's not doing. With that, I yield.
Excellent, because that brings us right back full circle to this idea of self-empowerment, this idea of needing to have an enhanced, in our case, an enhanced womanhood, enhanced feminine identity, something that's outside of what the Creator has prescribed or allowed or provided for us. So now we're going to look a little bit into what those sources might be. And we hear that Angela Sister Malaka refrained from naming anything in particular, but now we can go into spaces. We're just going to name names. We're going to start calling things out. I'll start with this. We see very often when the men want to rail against us, just random, we don't, to deactivate the feminine principle. There's this attack on the Mitzrayim, the Egyptian concepts of the man being God and the woman being God, for example. And so, of course, they only argue that the woman isn't God. I don't see too many arguments. They don't seem overly offended that the same concept places them in the stead of the Creator, or places them as part of a Godhead. But there's extreme pushback against the idea of the women being any type of goddess. Now, as Hebrews, we would agree that we don't put our women in this area. But why do you think that, along with Black Girl Magic, this goddess ideology is attractive to the women? So, for one of the alluring aspects is this goddess theology. Let's touch on that and then move on to something else. But first, I want to hear your brief thoughts, all of you, your brief thoughts on this goddess movement, this goddess acceptance, the turning away from the Creator. Why do you think that this is even attractive to Hebrew women, namely? Sister Only Love.
I think, to repeat what Mother Malaka mentioned, and also to go back to a convo you and I had in Harlem, I guess about a month ago, this is something that you brought up, that when people feel powerless, they seek these different methods to try to balance the power, whether it's manipulation through emotions or psychology, or whether it's different, rituals and belief systems. And, I think when we talk about this and when we progress, we really have to look within our own Hebrew community, and even some of the issues that was addressed on the relationship challenge last week. Because when you look into, even in other countries on the continent, and I'm not making excuses for people, we need to follow Yah's laws and commands as best we understand them regardless, but many times when people are feeling powerless in a relationship, feeling that, you keep pushing that second wife, you're abusing me, I'm not as strong as you, this can open the door for different practices to happen. And the way you deal with witchcraft, or whatever you want to call it, among the Hebrew women is really teach the empowering role of a Hebrew woman based on Torah. Going back to Sister Shika's excellent point about the spirituality and what we study. Like, what is the spiritual problem at the root of this? There's a couple of media articles saying that with the rise of Trump, more women of all backgrounds are seeking witchcraft. And Sephora, a very popular makeup store on the East Coast, has a witchcraft starter kit. And one of the items is something we're going to talk about tonight. Why is, women are really afraid even about the Supreme Court appointee. And we're not going to go into politics, but I'm just saying there's something in the air where especially the Hebrew woman feels powerless, but other women do as well. And it's not an excuse. We need to go to Yah, who's the source of our power. But for me, if I'm going to point out a problem, I want to get to the root cause so I can find the solution. If we continue to have abuse running rampant in our community, having men tell women they can't even pray or, teach their friends the scriptures without a husband as an intermediary like a Catholic priest, then we're going to have sisters having little secret groups and let me give you some higher level of knowledge. So that I think is what you said to me in Harlem. When people feel disempowered, they try various ways to get that power back. And sorry for bringing up a private convo, but
no, it's fine. It's fine. I'm glad that the conversation resonated, and that maybe it resonates with someone else in the audience. So no, Toda for bringing that back up, because I stand by that. I stand by the fact that if we keep giving women bad information, there's something that a lot of people like to make light of. This intuitively, women know better. And so they'll look for something that resonates, that makes more sense to them. This idea that they're useless doesn't make any sense to them. This idea that they're just a repository or a place to deposit semen doesn't make sense to them. So what they do, they seek for something that's more affirming. And so there's this other side of it. And they're going to a different extreme. They're going to what Sister Malaka was calling earlier. I have her Facebook name in my head, so I keep calling her Angela. My apologies. Sister Malaka keeps going back to is this idea of empowering oneself. If someone on the outside continues to disempower, you eventually go into, I'm going to just empower myself. And so there's some of that happening from what I have observed so far with why women are gravitating to this idea. But Sister Malaka, what have you noticed as one of the contributing factors for why this might be happening?
I would really agree with what has been said so far about feeling at a loss for power, feeling vulnerable. I've had sisters reach out to me who wanted me to pray with them because they had felt like they had tried everything to get their husband to stop pushing a certain issue in their marriage or stop berating them because of a non-agreement on a certain issue. And so they tell me stories of how they've tried, enchantments, casting spells, burning certain things to get rid of the bad spirit or the bad energy in their home. They tell me all these things they've tried, and then they call me to ask me to pray with them. Like that wasn't the first thought was let's pray. That was like the last thought. And so I think that what is happening is, we were in a microwave society. We're in an instant gratification society. And so many of us, rather than wrestle with Yah, in prayer, like Jacob, like how Jacob, rather than do that, rather than, meditate on the scripture and find what I can do in the scripture to make this situation better, if there's anything I can do according to scripture, rather than find the law or the statute, rather than do that, it's easier to do something different that I can do right now and feel like I accomplished something right now, whether I actually did or I didn't. So I believe that it is easy. So I would add to what, that sense of powerlessness, I would add to it seems like an easier path than the one that maybe Yah has prescribed. And with that, I yield.
That's some very thought-provoking insights, sis. I would agree with a lot of, if not all of what you just said. Sister Emunah, what are your thoughts? I think that both Oni Malaka and Sister Only Love have made amazing points, a lot of insight so far as into the psychology and even some of the pathology that's involved in wanting to embrace outside influences and outside factors. So what are your thoughts? What would you add to that?
I would essentially add that we're the same people. We're the same people. So being that we're the same people, and we're the same people of the book. And this has been an issue from time. You know what I'm saying? This is a reoccurring issue. This is something that our foreparents have gravitated towards. This was the beef. This is the reason why we've been kicked out. You know what I'm saying? It's the same old story. So the gravitation towards it is because it's familiar. Mm-hmm. Right? It is easier to go in a certain way. It is more difficult to trust in the Most High solely. This is why a lot of people gravitate towards something they can see, someone they can see, someone they can touch. You see what I'm saying? Because the inclination, this is why we see first, second, and third commandment. Make no images. Our first inclination, because of our state we have been removed, is I have to see something. Even if I make it up in my mind, I got to see something. I have to model something because we have the ability, like the Creator, to create.
Mm-hmm.
So man goes about now trying to make, and it can be whatever is going to be their idol. Man goes about making this idol in their mind so that they can empower it, and in turn the idol can empower them. You know what I mean? And so if we get to, and I heard that they said, if we get to the root of what this is, what we're really doing, and what we really need to overcome, we'll understand that this has been the age-old issue. It's just come back once again. You know what I mean? And that's what I would add to the conversation.
And for that, Sheikah, my apologies for getting to you all the way at the end of so many excellent points. I know there's probably a lot that you wanted to say that may have already been said, but if there's anything else you would like to add, absolutely, the mic is yours.
I would have to agree, due to our conditions, this is where people do try to empower themselves and say, okay, I'll embrace the term goddess, okay? It instead of being who society says I am in certain veins, which aren't positive, I can hold on to goddess and I can feel powerful. Also, we see this type of thinking manifesting, and I don't want to bring up the stereotype. It is a stereotype because statistics tells us that the average black woman has 2 kids or less, but we'll see one person who has like 5, 6 kids. And fairly young, because I just had 2 former students who have a lot of kids, and I'm like, I'm 35, I only have 1. What are you doing? And I really think their mindset specifically is that this is what makes me powerful. You know, I can create, and this is what I'm doing right now, and this is what I don't want to say good at, but this is what I can do right now versus the other things that I may be scared of doing, otherwise in the world, as far as obtaining your education or obtaining a certification or obtaining anything that will move you past the level that you're at right now. I believe that women try to do other things because they're trying to get things to manifest in their lives, you know, and I have been guilty of this, even with prayer. You can use that to a certain degree to where you keep on praying about something. Look, you put this in the air. He heard you. You know, move on. Try to be mobile and active during the time while you're waiting. And I think that when you try to make things manifest, you're trying to force something. You're trying to do work to make things happen. And so this is what we're constantly accused of by Christian counterparts. Oh, you guys just want to follow the laws and do the work so you can get saved, whereas the opposite is actually the stance of we're being obedient because we love him and we are in relationship. And so anything that we do is taking time for us, yes, to focus on the things that we desire and that we want in our lives, but having the patience to wait on it, not to do the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, is where we have to exercise that virtue. This is one I can't wait to have. So I'm working on that. And I'll add that to the conversation. I yield.
I want to touch on what you just said, this idea of procreation as evidence of power, of evidence of empowerment. It's very interesting that you said that, because there's a book, I want to say it's a book called Free Men and Free Women, but I think it's chapter 5, and it's the title of it is that survival is a form of resistance, and there's a number of short anecdotes in this particular chapter, and there's a woman in her anecdote that she says that she got pregnant because it was the only time she felt like she was alive. And it gave her something that she knew that she could, even if she knew she couldn't fully protect the child, it was something, like you said, she could do. And even if it meant sending the child off to school every day, not even being able to ensure that he'd come home, the fact that she was able to bring life was something that was still reassuring in that space. It's very interesting. This book is a really good book, and I encourage anyone to reach out to me for the actual title. I'm not sure if I'm confusing titles, but I do know that this particular chapter was called "Survival is a Form of Resistance," and it stuck with me because that's such a cool title. But it's just to say that what you're saying now, Sheikah, holds credence. This book is from women who were in the early 1930s or early 1920s even, and what they were going through. And the fact that all of this continues to echo even into the moment that we're in now speaks to what Emunah said, that this is happening since time immemorial. And that very often we always want to rejoice in that we are the people of the book when we're looking to embrace the blessings, when we're looking to embrace the promises. But then we forget that we are still the people of the book when we look at all of the betrayals, all of the idolatry, all of the waywardness, all of the denouncing of the Most Highest King and wanting to be like the neighbor's kids. We want to be like the other nations. We want a king we can see. So that speaks to what Emunah was saying. So we've looked now at why women may want to embrace this idea of magic, why she wants to be or she accepts this ideas of being a goddess. And we've touched on, so we're going to unpack a little more now, the ways, the specificities, the details of the ways that we go about carrying on these things. So there's candle magic, there's rocks and stones, and there's herbs and the like. So all of these have been categorized as means of conjuring. Do you put too much faith in the herbs? Do we put too much faith in the stones and crystals? Or how we put too much faith in candles and the like? So where is this? Are there any, before I say where are the safe spaces, my question is, are there any safe spaces for any of these elements, any of these items? Are they all bad? Is it automatically witchcraft to know about rocks, or to know about the crystals, to know about candles, the making of candles, the scenting of candles, the burning of candles, the incense and the herbs and the like? Are all of these taboo? I'll begin with Sheikah since I went to you last. I'll open with you for this question.
I don't believe that all are fairly outright witchcraft and magic. We do see certain things in the text of incense and things of that meaning. We also know that symbology is oftentimes used. I think it's the intent of the person. If the person is lighting a candle with the intent to please Yah, so they can in turn get a car or get a man or whatever the case is, then that's when it turns into a witchcraft scenario, I would say. Not necessarily just because you light a candle because you like the aroma as you pray, you know. And I think that we do have, this is a conversation today, we have so many people in our community who are scared of the boogeyman, so to speak. Anything that they don't know or understand somehow becomes demonized, which happens to us in our community from outsiders as well as some people inside. And so, therefore, I think we have to look at the intent of the person. We have to look at what are they trying to do. Are they trying to manifest something like The Secret, or are they trying to calm themselves to speak with the Creator? And so that's my take on it.
Sister Only Love, would you agree with Sheikah that it has something to do with intentionality, that some of these things are not necessarily inherently sorcery and witchcraft? And it's like, where's the line?
So I think the line is Torah, because regardless of your intentions, Yah can, give us grace, but there are certain things, for instance, is it wrong to burn like rose incense in your home for it to smell good? No, but there is a blend of incense in Torah that only the Levites could burn. Or there were times when Solomon and his wives from other nations burned incense to other deities. So, the question is not is burning incense right or wrong, but the question is who are you burning it to and what blend are you using? Because if you don't know you're a Levite, you should not be using a certain blend. It's even the same thing with anointing oil. You can use, hyssop oil as a perfume. I don't think people use it for a perfume, but if you wanted to smell like hyssop, you could. But there's a particular blend of oils that only the Levites could bring and could use. And so I think the line is Torah and the origin of the practice, because we're not to worship Yah the way the other nations do. So when we look at some of the issues with the church and holidays and things like that, some people say, oh, Christmas doesn't matter. But when you look into it, we cannot blend the sacred with the profane. So I think for anything you're doing, you have to examine it in the light of Yah's word, because something can seem innocent and you go in the history of it and it was something we did when we fell into idolatry. And I also, I'm going to wrap up, but I also want to say, one thing I see, since I mentioned some Levitical practices, is people using the continent and Hebrews on the continent as an excuse to do things that only Levites were supposed to do. And I actually was on the ground asking, the elders about regular people pouring libations and this type of stuff. And the elders said no, and these are not elders who were influenced by white Jews. Some of these people were not even in Torah, but from Hebrew tribes and royals of the tribes. And so I really don't, what I see with a lot of these things is people are using the continent as an excuse, and these faraway Hebrews in Africa. And a lot of times when you talk to the family over there, some of these practices we're doing, they're like, that never would that be for the average person or for anyone right now, because, they're in their various countries because, like us, we're scattered due to disobedience. So not everything that was brought into the continent was perfectly in line with Torah, but I'll leave that for another time.
Mm-hmm. Because we're going to get into some of this, and I know we're going to start naming herbs and the like now, because this is the area that both Emunah and Anya Malako have studied somewhat directly and intentionally. I remember watching a video. It wasn't a very long video, but it was a video from the continent, and I'm not sure if it's a video you shared, but it was of elder men explaining why the women were so paramount to the maintaining and the sustaining of the community. And one of the things they say, they talked about why women get consulted in times of war, but that's not for this conversation. The other part was why women were the ones that were trusted, specifically with the gathering of herbs. Was that a video that you shared with me? Are you familiar or aware of why they gave that? I remember the answer, but I'm wondering if you remember.
I didn't share that video with you, so I'm not sure why, but I do know among certain Hebrew tribes in Africa, the women play a very key role. And it's ironic to me that people want to take, certain traditions like libations, but then they don't want to take the Queen Mother tradition. So, but I would be curious if anyone else saw that video, because I'm not familiar with that. Do you know what tribe it was from?
I don't remember, because I want to say it was a year or so ago. I'm going to track it down, but essentially what the gentleman in the video stated was that women were more intuitive when it came to knowing which herbs were poisonous and which were good for food, which were good for medicine, which were good for stews or herbs, and that was something that was a skill among the women that the men knew they did not have. And so they entrusted it completely to the women. This idea of going into spaces and just detecting which herbs were good for what. It was a knowledge that was among the women. And the men didn't envy it. The men didn't try to take it from them. They understood that they were completely and wholly at the mercy of these things, because consider this, they did all of the cooking. The women did all of the cooking. So the women were putting poisonous herbs. The men wouldn't know the difference. It was something that they fully entrusted the women with, and he was very acutely aware of that in many respects, in this very, very practical way. The women were at the mercy of these women to live, because at any given time what they ate was being determined by the women. And this spoke to this knowledge of what the herbs were in their region, which were good for food, which were good for medications, which were poisonous and should be avoided. So now that we're looking at herbs, I just wanted to see if you remember that video. I don't remember the tribe. I'm going to look at or the nation. I'm going to look into it so that I can get that link, at least to you. If anyone else is curious, follow up with me. I'll share it with you also. Oni Malaka, which herbs did you come into contact with during your study that maybe prohibited to the use, or has it been misused, or the like, whatever? Where is the line with these crystals, candles, or herbs, or what have you? Where is the line?
Yeah,
Can you hear me?
Yeah, it was open.
Okay. I'm sorry. I think I had hit a button by mistake and had muted myself. But I have seen, a specific herb that is used quite a bit, and that would be sage. That seems to be like a big thing in our community. And what I would say about that is a couple of things. First thing is that there's some information that we just don't have. It either it wasn't preserved for us, or we have not yet uncovered it, have not yet discovered it. I came across some information that wasn't very fleshed out, so I didn't really use it. But it caused me to think, and the information was sharing that there were specific herbs or that were linked to specific worship of specific deities in ancient customs. And it was known and understood. That's why Yah required a specific blend for himself, because this was his scent. Kind of like if your husband has a specific cologne that he wears. He doesn't want you smelling like nobody else's cologne. The only cologne used to be smelling like it's him. And that's what Yah was, doing when he said, hey, these 5 herbs, you mix these together, and this is my blend. This is what you burn unto me. And anything else, don't burn that in here. Don't burn it in my house. And I want you to smell like me. When you're in my house, you smell like me. So there's information that we don't have. Like, we may not realize that a certain scent that we're burning was conducive to the worship of a specific deity, and that it was known that specific types of energy or demonic manifestations occurred and were connected to this specific scent. And so because we don't have all the information, I think that it's important to kind of be a little cautious with certain things. Now, there's 2 words I want to use that kind of, to me, are the line. Utilizing something as opposed to manipulating. When I use the word witchcraft, what I'm thinking about is the working definition that I would use is the manipulation of energy coming from created things, as well as the manipulation of the souls of men or women. I'm saying men as in mankind. Okay? So witchcraft is about the manipulation of created things for an expected or a wanted or desired outcome. And it's about the manipulation of the souls of humankind for a desired outcome. So if you are burning sage because you are trying to create a desired outcome that is a spiritual outcome, I'm going to say you're teetering in an area that may not be a safe place to be. If there are times in Scripture where it's mentioned to us about a negative spirit or a negative, something negative being attached to someone, and it's called, it's referred to as a wicked or bad spirit.
I think of Saul, King Saul. When he had this spirit come upon him, they didn't burn sage to cleanse the air and get rid of that spirit. What we're told is that David was called to play for him. And what David was known for playing is worship. He was known for worshiping. So how that negative energy was cleared wasn't by burning something, it was by connecting to the Creator through worship. So I think it's always safe to follow Torah or to not the pattern that's been given to us there for how to get an expected or a desired outcome, as opposed to doing something that we've read about or heard about that hasn't been thoroughly explored, hasn't been thoroughly looked into. Because, again, there is information that we don't have access to. We don't know everything about how worship was put forth towards other deities. We do know that the children of Israel got in trouble for having high places where they burned altars, where they had incense burning on altars. We know they got in trouble for that. We don't know what they were burning. And I want to close with what I'm saying, which is this little story. Like when I was a kid, my mother was real old school. She was one of those women that had plastic on her furniture. And my mother would take, her living room was off limits, sit in her living room, and only adults sat in her living room on special occasions. So my mother would take masking tape, and she would run a strip of masking tape that separated her living room from the rest of the house. And if you got caught on the wrong side of that masking tape, that was not good for you. That was not going to be a happy night. That might be a 911 call. It wasn't going to go well. So what I would say is, why do we want to walk on the line? I don't want to walk on the line of my mother's masking tape, because if I accidentally flip over, I'm going to get dealt with. And so if I don't know fully about how a specific herb was used, and if I don't see any pattern of why I'm using it in Torah, probably don't want to do that. Do I see a pattern for using herbs for healing in Tanakh? Yes. Do I see a pattern for using herbs for anointing oneself? Oils for anointing oneself? Yes. These are things I see there. But the purposes of cleansing the environment, I don't see that there. What I see for cleansing negative energy or bad spirits is I see worship and I see prayer. Those are the things that I see in patterns in Torah and Tanakh when dealing with what we would call negative energy or a bad space. So with that, I'm going to yield.
Well, so question: if the people are burning scents, be them sage or any other scent, and they're saying it's not to summon a deity, it's not in a worshipful space, it is for the releasing of the aroma, for the smell. They're not attaching any of these other practices to the burning. What is that the line, or is it just because we don't know what these herbs are? Because we don't know, according to Torah, necessarily what the herbs do. We should avoid all things that we don't see in the Torah.
I'm going to say that we need to be cautious, and we need to research. I myself, I like the use of essential oils. I would be not being honest if I said I didn't. I think essential oils can be used medicinally, but I think that there are purposes that essential oils could be used for that are probably not COTTAGE, not set apart, And so I would say, just like the scripture says that it says the love of money is the root of all evil, but people turn that around and they say money is the root of all evil. Mm-hmm. I don't think oil is evil. I don't think that a particular herb is evil. I think it is the desire to manipulate energy to get a desired outcome, whether that energy is the energy of a created thing like an oil, a plant, or the energy of a soul. If I'm burning something and the desired outcome is that it smells good in my home, some diehard hardcore could say, yeah, that's manipulating energy.
That's why a lot of people in the old school churches back in the day, they didn't burn incense at all because they felt like they were, manipulating energy. So I think that the line is vague in a sense, that you have to be cautious and sensitive and study Torah and have a relationship in prayer with the Father, so that if you are being a little too close to the line, you can get that internal check. But I would just say that we have to be careful whenever we're manipulating energy. And everything we do, that's why the Amish don't have lights in their houses, right? Because they say you flip on the light switch, that's energy. They consider that almost like witchcraft. So you can go to an extreme with this, or you can be, somewhere in the middle. And I can't tell each individual, if you burn sage, you're a witch. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, if you're burning sage because you're trying to get a bad spirit out of your home because your husband keeps pressuring you to do something that you think is not in Yah's will for your household, that is witchcraft.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for that clarity, sis. I appreciate you. Sister Emunah. Yes?
I just wanted to quickly interject with something that is way across the line, because I think there's instances where we can debate and this and that, but I'm just going to, and I've said this to a couple of you before, this come across my attention. There are certain Hebrew women using juju bags. And for those of us who have family from the South or from the South or from West Africa, those are like bags of different herbs and, materials that you use to skin and bones to manipulate a person or a situation. That is nowhere near Torah. It's no debate. So if you're doing something like that, you've crossed the line. So I just wanted to quick say that for the edification of the sisters, because we may be talking about some fuzzy areas, but it's come across my attention that in others that there are things that are going way beyond the line of what is permissible by Torah. And so if you're engaging in any of that, you really need to stop and repent and cry out to Yah. So I'm sorry, sis. I just wanted to quickly say that.
Thank you so much.
Can I say something real quick, Sister Liana? I mean, I'll be really short because I know I took some time.
Okay.
I just wanted to clarify that I'm talking about the manipulation. I'm not talking about burning something because it smells good in your house. I'm talking about what you're trying to create. What outcome are you trying to get by using that particular herb, whether it's sage or whatever it is? Just like the juju bag that Sister Only Love just talked about. That's the use of herbs to manipulate. With that, I yield.
Okay. So for clarification, so that we can all be on the same page, and the audience has heard a lot about juju bags now and burning and spirits and the like, and maybe what are they talking about now? For those of you who have just joined us, this is Under the Palm, Hebrew Women Speak, and we're looking at when black girls need magic. So we've been talking about all of these goddess circles, this hashtag Black Girl Magic, and of course, the use of candle magic, crystals, stones. I guess we could arguably talk about yoga, all these other things that have been questionable in the practices because they belong to other cultures, are tied to other things, and in some cases are being used to, as Sister Malaka said, manipulate outcomes. Again, this is Debate Talk for You, Hebrew Women Speak. We're at the 9:35 mark, and just a reminder that if you haven't already called in, the number is 319-527-6239, and you remember to press 1 to join the conversation. At the 10 o'clock hour, we will be losing Only Love, but we will be going into the overtime portion of the show. And if you aren't already called in, you will not be able to hear our closing remarks and our closing thoughts. For now, I'm going to turn the mic over to Emunah. So, Emunah, where's the line? What are your thoughts about sage? Is a very popular herb, and it has been connected to smudge sticks and Native American rituals, even the continent. There is some question about whether or not it's mentioned in the Torah, the Tanakh, or is this part of our culture? Do we use, is there any record or any idea of us using what's available in nature to execute this kind of what might be thought of as manipulating outcomes?
Wow, I'm being sure. This conversation is juicy. It's so much. I was like, ooh, something right there. I didn't write it down because I'm just listening. A little tired, but I'm listening. There's so much that was said. I think I'll start with what Oni Love said and what she brought in as it relates to the line, what's clearly over the line. And you asked me earlier, why did I take so much time to define? Because the Torah is very clear on what's clearly the line, right? So we don't have to reimagine the line. And so when Oni Love brings up a juju bag, or obia bag, or a charm, that's clearly Torah, right? That's clearly a violation where it says the maker of charms. Now we have to understand that what it's talking about is, yes, the manipulation of elements, but as Sister Malaka said, when you really look at things, everything is a manipulation of the physical to get the desired result. If somebody cannot sleep and they go and get chamomile, they have an understanding about the essence of that particular herb, that if you ingest it, it will make you tired. You just use the herb, put fire to it with water, change the way in which it was originally in nature, and then ingested it to get a desired result. When you look at the entire medical society, pharmacies, their whole thing is based off of herbs and their knowledge of said herbs that they use to manipulate people to get a desired result, right? And so this goes like further than just, and maybe it's my certain side, but this demonizing of any one particular thing. Right? So in the early 1900s in America, it's ganja, it's marijuana. Now all of a sudden people want to grow marijuana farms because they see the benefits of it. You see what I'm saying? So the Creator gives us these things, and people with knowledge of how to use these things rightly and how to abuse these things. And so as Sister Malaka said, maybe we don't have all the research on it, but I personally, because we don't see sage in Torah, we have to look at, again, we didn't live in a vacuum. What was accessible in that part of the world? What knowledge did we have access to? What things were, when Queen of Sheba comes from the south, she's bringing all these things. When we talk about incense, when we're talking about fumigating the place with things that are sweet smelling, this was huge industry. The apocrypha, the perfume maker is huge industry. You see what I'm saying? That was one of the commerce, that's one of the things that they're sending on the roads for personal use as well as religious use. And where we see a lot of, and I put religion in quotes, where we see a lot of religious use is regulated. If the Torah doesn't then say that in personal spaces, if you burn this thing, whatever, for us to say that, then it's like, okay, we just added to the Torah. What we see highly regulated without question is offering incense to the Creator that was not approved and offering incense to any deity, period. We see that in the story. We see that with the strange fire. We see what the Creator calls it. We see how He deals with that situation. So that's where I stand on there. We can have conversations about it, but for me to say, listen, this is what it is, because witchcraft, when we talk about witchcraft, and I know I'm jumping because I'm trying to remember everything. When we talk about witchcraft, we have to go about what it says witchcraft is. What is a witch according to Torah? So you have some mumblings, you have some spells, you have some hissing, you have the individual trying to imbue this physical thing with some type of energy, like Sister Malaka said, to get a desired result. Now, you ask the question, if the person likes the thing, the intention in their mind, if they said, if they have a thought to say, I'm going to clear this space, and that's it. They didn't call, they didn't summon. As I wrote in the article, they didn't do all those things. How then can we say, hey, man, that's witchcraft? You see what I'm saying? I mean, for me, I'm like, okay, where does the witchcraft come in? The witchcraft is somebody get an obia doll, they guzzle upon the obia doll, and then they're watching to see what happens. But there is a spiritual realm that is round about us that we have been disconnected from. And our introduction to it is from other cultures. But it may be new, but it's not new. And so we gravitate to certain things without really understanding the other side of it. Sage comes up often, but when you look into Native American culture, sage is not the only thing that's there. Just in the same way when you talk about Hebraic culture and cleansing, cleanse me with hyssop. Hyssop was of the region. They knew that hyssop cleanses the blood. If you look up the properties of hyssop, hyssop is good for cleansing the blood and cleansing the body. So he says, cleanse me with hyssop. He wasn't just making a proverbial song. This is something that they did. This is something that somebody knew about. So I would say, I personally, when it comes to, because when we label people and things that stick to people and things without considering what we're doing, and Sheikah said it earlier, because we don't understand it, that is also dangerous. And that's why I took the time. I did see the post at Sister Malaka. It intrigued me. I asked several questions because I took the time to say, are we sailing witch hunting right now? You see what I'm saying? And are we sailing witch hunting? Like, oh, that's witchcraft. Oh, that's witchcraft. You know what I'm saying? Because that's not a small matter. When you put that label on somebody or something or people, it's not a small matter. Because if we're talking about being back where the Torah is enacted, you have to go for that person. You see what I'm saying? And so this is something that I personally say, let me take the time, energy, and effort to look into so that I'm not giving somebody a wrong information. And I would agree with Sister Oni Love, and I'll leave it here, and hopefully I answered all the questions in the crazy roundabout Emunah way.
I got a question. You brought up, first, I think there's an important point that was said, this idea of, in terms of the Native Americans, that and I think Only Love would agree that sometimes we use catch-all phrases, and Native American is not a monolithic group, just like Africa isn't one group. You know, we say, oh, the Africans do this thing, and then Africans are like, which African are you talking about? Because I don't do what they do, right? Okay. So we run into those kinds of problems when we try to generalize about what all Africans do, like you said before, what all Hebrews do. I think all of you made that point of what all Hebrews do or what any ethnic group does. And so I'm glad that you brought that up. My question, though, you brought up the Apocrypha. And if memory serves, in the Apocrypha, we find one of the Malachim concocting something and very specifically and deliberately telling Tobias that this is something you can do. Use this and it will have this desired effect. Why isn't that? Where's the line? Why isn't that witchcraft? That's what I'm saying. When you look at it and you take the time to look at it, that's exactly what he's doing. There's an idea that's forwarded that's what I took the time to look. Okay, is this present in other cultures? Is this a universal principle? Is this human created? The idea of smoke connecting you to the gods, so-called, quote unquote, air quotes, right? And then we see it in Torah. The Most High is like, this is where I'm going to meet you. And being that I'm going to meet you in this space, it needs to be pure, and it needs to be in the way in which I said, right? But that's in a quote religious space, in a temple setting for a certain people, a certain person who's qualified and selected to do this thing. But then you didn't have Febreze, you know what I'm saying, and then the Gev. You had smells, you had animals, you had all these things. So what were the people doing in their home? And as you're saying, in the case of Tobias, and if you don't know the story, check it out in the Apocrypha, there was a malignant, the evil spirit, that was troubling Anna. Anna was her name? Sarah. Sarah. Anna's daughter Sarah. And the Malach is telling him, this smoke is going to run this individual or this thing off. And I remember when I was doing this, I was like, wow, I remember that story. Why? You know what I'm saying? I don't know fully why he says this thing is going to do whatever the case may be. So my thought is, and my point is, it's not purely Native American to say that burning something is going to run off some type of spiritual energy that you don't want in your space, because we find it in the Apocryphal books. And that really was my point for putting that there, that, okay, maybe this is not just one-off. You see what I'm saying? The natives. Maybe this is coming from somewhere else. Maybe this is, I don't know. I haven't gotten to the fullness of the end of it. But we can't say this is totally pagan. You see what I'm saying? This is totally of the nations, and it shows up in your script. You know what I mean? Like, whoa. And if it shows up in your script, and yes, we do have pagan things that show up in the script, but this in particular, we see it in the context of there is a connection
that happens, or a disconnection. Because, and I'll leave it at this. When I looked up what they were talking about in some Native American cultures, and you're right, they don't like being called just Native American. It's like saying, quote unquote, black people. You have this thought of the clearing away ceremony, or the cleansing of someone's space from entities and energy. Because in reality, and this is one thing that Israel does not talk about a lot, and I believe Sheikah said it again, about this whole boogeyman concept. There is a total spiritual world that is happening around us all the time. That's why one of the prophets was like, open his eyes, Most High, that he may see. And he looked up and he's seen all the Malachim. There are some people who are able to see it and hear it and feel it, and then there are others who are not. There are some people who are easy targets, and then there are others who are not. And if Israel doesn't get real about talking to these people and addressing them where they are, this is what pushes people off to go look for, quote, magic, to go look for somebody who can answer or really deal with what is happening on a day-to-day basis. You understand what I'm saying? Or what they've been struggling with. And so this is why I think this conversation is important, because we need to address these things, because people are looking for answers. So I relinquish the mic.
Okay, and total for that, because what I'm hearing, and I'm going to turn the mic over to Only Love, because we're winding down, we're coming to the 10 o'clock hour, and unfortunately Only Love has to prepare for another engagement tomorrow, I believe. So, but what I hear so far is that it does, that the two of you are not totally disagreeing, that what I hear Oni Malaka saying is that because we don't know, we should be cautious, because there's so many things out there. There's so many herbs that have all of these properties that could maybe in our innocence and in our unknowing awaken other things. Even if our intentions aren't necessarily there, in our unknowing, we can awaken and unlock things. And I'll give Oni Malaka a chance to comment on that after we hear from Only Love. Again, if you're just joining us, this is Under the Palm, Hebrew Women Speak, and we're talking about magic. We're talking about witchcraft, sorcery, and its allure to the women of Israel and to Native women in general. And we have Sister Only Love, Sister Malaka, Sister Emunah, and Sister Sheikah really helping to unpack whether or not this is occurring in a vacuum, if this has some type of historical situations and planning why we are coming. We're not coming to this space out of nowhere. So Only Love, you've heard some interesting things. If you want to comment on some of the things that you've heard so far about certain things appearing in the apocryphal books or in the Torah and the Tanakh, whether or not the degree to which intentionality plays in things, and even in the unknowing and the innocence of toying with some of these things, maybe just because we don't know, we should avoid. What are your thoughts? I know that you have to go, so you can add your closing thoughts as well.
Well, shalom and good night, everyone, and thank you, Mayana and Sal, again for hosting, and welcome, Sheikah, to the panel. I just want to say in closing, this topic came up because I'm not on a witch hunt. I'm not a spooky person. I'm very aware of spiritual wickedness in high places. I'm very connected to the continent, but there are many Hebrew girls even being lured into groups to do things, and it's cool to have a private group on Facebook, but when it goes beyond that, anything secret that someone's inviting you to may not be of the Most High. So I'm not trying to witch hunt, but these are things that have come across my desk, and so I really want anyone who is listening to really consider before you do anything you're not sure of. Someone else may be sure of it, but if you don't have a personal conviction, like if it violates your conscience, it may be a sin for you to engage. Now, I will say, I feel if you're smudging and burning sage to summon spirits, because when you read certain Native American spiritual leaders, they say the sage is burned to summon spirits, not just cleanse. We need to think, do we want to summon other things? And one scripture that comes to mind is 1 Corinthians 10:23. I have the right to do anything, you say, but not everything is beneficial. I have the right to do anything, but not everything is constructive. So some of us, we're struggling to read 5 minutes of Torah a day. We're struggling to pray. We're struggling just to get through a one-day fast. Some of us can't even forgive our parents for things they've done for us, done to us in our childhood. These are all practical steps people can take towards healing, towards getting access to Yah's Ruach HaKodesh, his power. Some of us are struggling to do the simple things, and sometimes even I struggle to do the simple things. Forgiveness is hard, but sometimes we're not even doing the basic things as Hebrews, and yet then we begin to get off into things we're not sure about, things that may seem more exotic. For me, when I'm dealing with certain things from my childhood, those of you who know my testimony, the most, great thing that I could do was forgive my parents. But it wasn't no sage or crystal or a piece of incense going to take away certain hurts I've had in my heart. And so I really want you to ask this week, if you're thinking when you do different things, is it beneficial? Or is it something less glamorous that Yah is telling me to do, that I need to do to get to the next level of healing and power? And so with that, I'll relinquish the mic and say good night and shalom.
Shalom, shalom. Onila, thank you so much for that. Great point. Excellent, excellent point. Prayerfully that everyone under the sound of your voice listened carefully to that advice. It's important and critical. So shalom and Laila Tov. I'll see you in 2 weeks.
Yes, see you in real life. Shalom, ladies. Good to be back. Shalom, Sal.
So guys, I think that those of you who have been listening have heard the sisters pretty much run the gamut on why this is something that deserves our attention, why we have given this our opening thoughts as the first show of the season is on this idea of magic. It definitely, this idea of, because it's tied to our faith in the Creator, as Sheikah brought up earlier, it's tied to our willingness to research, our willingness to look into things, and to accept that certain things we just don't know, and to know when to just not touch, right? When to put your hands on something and when not to put your hands on something. When to say, that's interesting, let me look into it. Maybe I'm not the one. Even if this is a harmless thing, maybe I'm not the one to be touching it. And we have had conversations about some of that. We heard Only Love say certain things only belong to the Levites. If you're not a Levite, don't touch it. We've heard Sister Only Love say, Sis Malaka saying, I don't know what this does. I don't want to touch it. Because knowing or unknowing, I could release something. I could be touching something. So, you know what, sis, before I don't want to put a lot of your thoughts onto this without talking to you, because I have you on the panel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to Sheikah, and then Oni Malaka, I want you to come back into the conversation and talk to us a little bit about your thoughts about what happened in the Apocrypha account with Tobit, and your thoughts on that. And if I'm correct in saying that there's this idea of, because you may unknowingly and in your innocence unlock things, is there some of that, some of the caution that I hear in your speech about this, that it may be coming from that, even the unknowing, the innocent touching of things. Not all intents are malicious, and we still unlock things. So she could go ahead and weigh into the conversation, and then we'll get back to Oni Malaka.
Thank you. I think something that we haven't touched on is also the use of those things. Is it ritualistic? Is it something that you do religiously? And so if you are praying, you say, well, I need my white candle and I need my incense and I need this because it makes my prayer greater, then yes, that is an instance where you're crossing the line as well. And so we have to be careful about how we're animals of habit. We're creatures of habit, however that goes. And so, yes, having habits like in your daily routine as far as getting ready and things of that nature, fine. But again, if it's like I have to always pray this way, or it isn't a good prayer, where would you find that in Torah? What makes you think that? And so we have to be cognizant of the way that we are, or we become emotionally attached to the habits or the things that we do. And so that's something also to consider. And I'll yield with that.
That's an excellent point. The way that we organize certain ritualistic behaviors around things also lend to how we attach meaning to some of these acts and behaviors and what elements we are incorporating into our spiritual practices. If we're coming before the Most High, but then we're trying to marry foreign ideologies to, like you say, supercharge, our prayers and our sacred practices, then we are definitely missing the mark. Sis Malaka, are you there?
I am here.
Awesome. So could you go ahead and weigh in? Because so much has been said, and some of your points have been looked at and reexamined and built upon. And so I kind of tried to paraphrase on your behalf, but I want you to go ahead and kind of clarify for the people, speak for yourself. And was I close to, am I restating what you were possibly saying earlier?
Yes, you are. You're hitting some of the things that I was saying. In order to, in terms of weighing in on the account in the Apocrypha, what I would say about that is this: if it's not, even when it comes to looking at things that I believe from the New Covenant or from the Brit, when I'm looking at what I believe and what I have formerly believed, if I can't find it in Torah, I have to put that on the shelf and come back to that later. So I see that in the Apocrypha. I understand that account. But if I can't find that in Torah, I have to put that on the shelf and come back to visit that later. I don't have enough to go on. It needs to be in Torah for me. And I'll start there. I told a story about my mother's living room because I wanted to make a point. And the point is, if you know, you meaning us as the people, Israel, if we know that we have had a propensity to fall into mixed worship, to mix the profane with the holy, with the COTTAGE, if we know that we have maybe even a predisposition to do this because it's kind of in our DNA, what I'm saying is, rather than just seeing how close we can get to the line, we might want to stay further away from the line. As a parent, and I'm speaking as a parent because I can relate many things to Yah as a father, because that's just the concept that he gives us to work with. Not that he's, in that role of father. He's more than that, but I'm just using that as a concept he gives us to relate to. As a parent, if I have a child, I know my child's weakness. I know each of my children. If I have a child that is likely to overeat, I'm not going to put that child in the kitchen by themselves with a whole bunch of cupcakes. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say, you can only have something sweet when I tell you you can have something sweet. And I'm going to, and as that child is growing, I'm going to try to teach them about eating right. I'm going to try to teach them about when it's appropriate to do that, or if it's ever appropriate to eat sugar, if that's ever good for you. I'm going to be trying to give them the tools to distinguish between what is good for their body and what is bad for their body. But while I'm giving them the tools, I don't give them carte blanche to do whatever they want, to just indulge. Because I know that child can't handle that carte blanche. They're not mature enough yet. They're not ready. Or they're predisposed to do the opposite of what's good for them. And so when I say, be careful, because you may not have all the understanding on that particular thing, what I'm saying is look at our history. If I come from a family of diabetics, I need to be aware of that in how I eat and in my lifestyle. I need to walk accordingly so that I don't end up in the same place that the people who have gone before me have ended up. So, yes, I'm very passionate about this, and I'm sorry if I get like a little heightened in the way that I'm communicating, but the reason that I'm passionate is because I get phone calls. I've had 5 sisters in the past 2 weeks call me because they feel like they're losing their sanity. They're losing grip of their sanity because they tried a series of things deemed out of the usual, not the norm for Torah. If we don't want to call it witchcraft, we can call it whatever we want to call it. But it's not things that are Torah-based in terms of how you handle your problem. And they've tried these things, and not only did they not get the desired result they want, but they feel like they're losing their faith.
in the Most High, or they feel like they're losing a grasp on reality. I've seen it, and I don't know if anyone else on the panel can say they've seen it, but I've seen sisters go so far off with the pursuit of knowledge and the pursuit of power that they've ended up having nervous breakdowns, losing touch with reality. And if we think about it, probably some of us can think of people that we've seen just in our walk. I've seen it in just my 5 years of walking in the faith. I've seen it, you know. And so I'm really passionate about it because this is something that I labor with and love with sisters every day. I think it's safer to follow the patterns that we see in Torah for dealing with our feelings of disempowerment, for dealing with our feelings of resentment, rejection, all these issues that we encounter as women. There are patterns that we've been given, and I think the Father would encourage us to stick a little closer to the script. All things are lawful, but not all things are expedient, as Sister Only Love was sharing in the scripture from the Brit. And then with that, I'll yield.
That was very interesting. And, you know, it's interesting. It's true that because the language that Only Love used was different, but it's true that in certain texts, the text says all things that Paul makes that all things are lawful.
Yeah.
And that's very interesting.
And I don't mean that in terms of the breadth of the law. I'm talking about things that I can do. I can do some things.
Right. No, but I agree. No, I agree. I believe that the language is different. The language that Only Love used would be more accurate than the idea of, and I know that you're only quoting certain translations. I'm not putting that on you, but I think that's very interesting because all things aren't lawful. And so it's interesting that some translators somewhere found that an interesting way to word something, because we know as Hebrews all things are not lawful.
Right.
And so I think that it's best the way that it was phrased by Only Love, that you may have the idea that you have the right to do something. You have access to all these other things that all things are intelligent or expedient or beneficial for you to pursue. And I think, and I hear that from you. I hear that that's what you're saying. And you know, this panel, of course, appreciates passion and intensity. And of course, I would never ask you to limit that. So I appreciate you being very sincere and very transparent with us in this conversation. I was saying all that, and I wanted to bring Emunah back into the conversation because I had a question for her, and as I'm actually trying to remember where I was going with the thought. Emunah.
Yeah, I'm here. I wanted to address some of the things that I heard, and I would agree with Sister Malaka that, you know, if people know me offline, this part you may not know. I am very passionate in this part, and there's a reason, there's a method to my madness, and why. If we don't have a counterbalance, and if we don't push back on certain thoughts, then we can overcorrect. Like somebody putting on braces, your teeth are crooked, you put the braces on too long, now your teeth are crooked again, right? And so Solomon puts it as, why be over-righteous much, right? And so the thought is, if it's there, or if it's not there, that we do not take a church approach to how it is that we tell people or discourage them from going in a certain direction. Because ultimately, it is, if the person is there, then it makes sense. You ever had somebody explain something to you? They're there, it makes sense. The moment they're not there, it doesn't make sense anymore. And so part of our problem, that's what happened with Moshe. Moshe is there. The people are like, yeah, I hear you. Moshe is not there. It doesn't make sense anymore, right? And so when we continue to be perpetual children, not in the sense of not really getting that understanding of what it is that we're venturing into and doing, this is what causes the problem. So as it relates to the question, and I'll let you ask your question about the Apocrypha, that was a method that the Apocrypha is relaying, that this Malak is telling to Tobias what to do. In the case of Dawid, we can assume that that's not, first of all, that's the history. In the case of Dawid, that's not like Torah. That's the history. It's not. It's like in the law, like evil spirit has come upon you. Play a violin. You know what I'm saying? Play a harp. That's not Torah. That is something culturally that someone knew. Hey, you know, bring this guy in and let him do this thing. You see what I'm saying? And so we see it pop up. We see some things pop up within the Tanakh that are not necessarily in the first 5 books, but it looks like some kind of knowledge that someone had that can help that situation. And so what I try to concentrate on is this person, say if somebody is appealing to something that is questionable. So we're going to use in the case of Saul. What did Saul do to allow this evil spirit to take residence in him? A lot of people don't understand. They're trying to chase something off and not understanding what you are doing or participating in that is opening the door to allow this manifestation to happen. You see what I'm saying? And so allowing them to be cognizant and aware that, hey, if you do this, this, and this opens the door. In Saul's case, it was disobedient. So that opened the door, right? And so when we talk about our truest protection is Torah. But then when we open the door in certain places, it can manifest as sickness. Then you're going to have to go to somebody who says, this is the herb you take for that. You know what I'm saying? This is the message you take for this. Because the Most High has given us the things here that we are supposed to be used for our healing, our benefit, and our health. So there is a place for prayer, even in the case, and I'm going to give it to you, Sister Maya. There's a place for prayer. There's a place for meditation, meaning petitioning the Creator, thinking on His word. And then Sheikah said it. Sheikah said a lot of stuff earlier. And then there's a time to do that which we're asking for, where we keep burdening the Most High and keep asking for the very same things that we asked for before. Like He told Moshe, get up and do something. Well, I'm paraphrasing. Moshe is like, Most High, he's like, yo, get up. It's in your hand. Do something. Because He's given us that power to do. So it's a balancing act of understanding the ability that we've been given in the earth, and that we are sometimes disempowering ourselves because we don't realize that oftentimes the Most High has already given us that which we are asking for. We have to plant the seed. The Most High gives us the increase. But I'll give it to you, Sister Mana. You can ask the question. And again, like Sister Angela said, I'm not mad. That's just the passion of this particular topic, because I've seen people go head first off the deep end. Head first. And you want to, and it bothers you. It comes back to your remembrance. Like, what could I have said differently? You know what I'm saying? How could I have reached that person, if at all? Because they asked a question that I didn't care enough to really research or have an answer that will put them on the path where they'll realize, because sometimes people need to find out for themselves. You understand? But other times we need to be equipped to give an answer that is satisfactory. Or say, hey, you know what? I don't know. Let's get some understanding together, so that the person, when they won't say, you know what, Mayana told me not to do it, Malaka told me not to do it, Only Love told me not to do it. They say, no, I know this is what I'm not supposed to do because of X, Y, and Z. And now you're empowering that person in a space, in other places where they were just listening to whatever word felt good at the time. But go ahead, Sister Malaka.
Well, I want to say a few things, because I was listening to you talk. You just rang all kinds of bells. I remember my question and like 4 other things. But one thing I want to comment on is that I heard both my sister Emunah and my sister Malaka make almost apologies for their passion. And I want to say this: I find it really, really cool that what they're calling, I'm not mad, don't mistake my energy for being angry, is that this doesn't even sound angry. Like, I'm thinking, what is this, like old European woman angry because none of y'all sound mad to me? So but I know that that's just the passion, and I know that there's a little intensity, but it goes back to this idea of the melanated woman always feeling like she has to explain her tone and this kind of policing her tone. But I want to say that, you're not sounding angry. Believe me, I've heard angry from probably both of you, and this is not it. So I want the listening audience also to kind of pay attention to even that we have a sense of policing our tone. That's another thing that is unique to women, and specifically melanated women, being always conscious of our tone. But to go back to the things that when I was listening to Emunah speak, whenever you mention Dawid's name, whenever anyone mentions Dawid's name, it rings bells for me. So I already had like ding, ding, ding going off the moment she said Dawid. But I'm going to look at 2 things that was mentioned with Dawid. before I ask my question. Because in truth, a lot of what I was going to ask, Emunah actually touched on and answered, and I'll give everyone else a chance to touch on and answer the point also. But in the case of Dawid, the solution that he had, like we heard, it was prayer, it was entreating the Creator. We see here that when Saul was dealing with whatever was possessing him at the time, that Dawid didn't pray for him. He played music, and that knowledge, we talk about it all the time, what knowledge came from the fallen angels, musicology came from the fallen angels as well. The manipulation of sound. I mean, he literally lulled a spirit, a demonic or malicious spirit, by using sound, music. The Pied Pipers, like depending upon who's telling this particular story, the Pied Pipers is malignant, is malicious in his intent of luring people behind by this sound. When we talk about following the tune of the Pied Piper, this is not a great thing, right? But this is what essentially we find Dawid doing, using music, in much the same way as we're describing what burning the fish did for Sarah, and what burning certain smells does in other spaces. So it's very interesting how, like Malaka said, kind of looking at, do you want to get too close to the line or just avoid the line? Where this line becomes almost, you become very aware of this line. And then the idea is, do you want to get too close? How close can you get to it, or should you just avoid the line altogether? But the fact is that we keep getting confronted with this line because it's woven into so many of our responses. A lot of women, for example, you go through a breakup, you listen to music. You know what I'm saying? It's just some of our go-tos are just, this is what we know. It's what we know, and then the idea is, why do we do it? But one of the things that Emunah was talking about, which was to the question I wanted to ask, to the question that I want to ask, or the concept that I wanted to present, is that Emunah mentioned that Shlomo spoke about being righteous over much. But then there's this idea, are we being protective over much? Are we saying, don't go too close to the line, don't touch the stove, it's hot, but not explaining anything? Are we denying? In some cases, in our attempt to protect others, we say, just don't go there. Just don't, trust me. And Emunah spoke about keeping someone as a perpetual child. As adults, we don't tell children certain things because we don't believe they can understand it. They're not at a level where they need to have that much information. So we just say, listen, you're too young, you don't understand, just don't do it. But is there a point where the people have to grow up and know why they can't do it, or have the information so they can make informed choices about things? Are we not telling? If it's that can we make definitive statements like, you can't burn rosemary, you can't burn sage, you can't burn peppermint, you can't burn that, don't do it? Can we make hard, definitive don't do's and not be able to really explain why, other than, because then does it become spooky? Are we spooking them? Are we, don't do that, as a boogeyman in the closet and under the bed? Do we have to be able to say, don't do this because? Is there a value in being able to say, don't put your faith in quartz or amber or the pearl, whatever stone you think has magical properties. I mean, but you don't want to deny that there are energies. These crystals have energy, because what happens is they go out and find out. Wait a minute, crystals do have energy. While we were thinking we were being protective and saying, don't touch that, don't go into that space, it's spooky, and then they go and they find out, wait a minute, there is something to this. So this is the question I'm asking. Is there value in finding out why we can't go into these spaces and having those conversations, instead of pretending that because it's out there and we don't really know it, so just don't touch it? Even I give an example. For example, for some people, it's important to believe that the Creator is the only. When the Creator himself says, put no other before me, there's an acknowledgement that you are going to encounter other ideas. You're going to encounter other people with other ideas of deity. There are other powers in the universe. They're not better than me. I'm the most high. You can't be the most high if you're the only one on the block. So there's this idea. So when we have this idea, we have to say there's only one. And then what happens when someone goes out and says, okay, well, this person's never heard about power. So what are they talking about? Right? So I'm not sure if I'm losing the audience or I'm losing even my panel, but is there a place where we have to say, okay, this thing exists. Let's be honest about these existing properties and then say, this is why you don't touch it. This is why we don't do these things. Is it because we're not being – I'll give one more example and then I'll leave it to the panel. We talked earlier about women going out and embracing these concepts of being a goddess when the Metzrayim or the Kemet or the Egyptian people say there are these feminine empowerment movements all over the place. Women become attracted to that because in their Hebraic understanding, they're not that. Their only role, as they understand it as Hebrew women, is to be submissive, and there's no agency here. So when they find out that there's a space that does have agency, they run there and go, okay, this makes more sense to me. Now, had they been in the Hebraic community that told them there's plenty of agency here, but because the people they came into contact with told them there was no agency, it wasn't there. There was nothing for them to do but be submissive to a man and to take his seed and then give back his seed, and that's all she really came to do, and that's all she believed. Now, our text tells her so much more, but she hasn't read that. So she's able to be lured into these other spaces because it looks better over there. She doesn't believe it's over here. So I'm hoping that example gives some insight into what I wanted to say about my overall question. Are we mystifying this too much? Are we mystifying some of these things too much, maybe to the detriment of the thing, of our overall goal? And because I want you to follow, but this is the last thing that I wanted to say quickly. There's a book called Midwives, Nurses, and Witches, or those three are in the title. And the point of this book, it's not a very long book. I think it's only like 100 pages. But in the book, what it basically says is that there was a point where women, who we would call nurses, women were the only ones who were doing all of this healing. They knew which herb went where, and they were the ones, the midwives were called out. These women with a specialized knowledge of herbs were the only ones that everybody trusted. When the medical profession took off, and Emunah touched on it briefly, when the medical profession took off and the men became certified doctors, it became not profitable for these lay women to have the trust of the people with their herbs as opposed to these fancy engineered chemical medications. And so these women who were known as healers, who were known as midwives, who would be what we call nurses, were labeled witches. Witches. So they were hunted as well. So the idea of, are we doing a witch hunt? It's not completely like Salem witch trials witches. It wasn't meant to be, and I think maybe some of it got kind of picked up that way. But the idea is it's not to say that there's this kind of malicious witchcraft, but it's the same women who were just doing or sharing the knowledge of what herbs do. Once it became something that was not profitable to the new medical or fledgling medical profession, these women needed to be called witches because it was a skill the men didn't have. It was a skill you couldn't get a certificate in. It was knowing when to put a leaf in the right place or where to add water to, what tea to drink. These women knew those things. And the knowledge of herbs was enough to be labeled a witch. And it came with all of the consequences of being a witch. You were hunted, you were outcasted, you were burned, you were all of these things. Simply because you knew how to assist a pregnant woman in giving birth. So I think that's important. Again, the name of this book was, I want to say, Witches, Midwives, and Nurses, or Witches, Nurses, and Midwives. I'll find the title again. maybe I'll put it in the inbox. But I've said a lot. Sheikah, what are your thoughts on some of the things that I said, and maybe you can clarify some of the questions that I asked.
Yeah, I think sometimes we do overprotect, and unfortunately in psychology what we learn is when we tell people not to do something, that just makes them want to do it more. And so it is important to have specifics on why and what could happen. Otherwise we turn into what a lot of us left, which is the Christian church, where don't ask questions, and people, I think at this point, get a little, a red flag goes up. I'll say that. A red flag goes up when people are telling them not to do something but don't have the answers as to why. And so I think we ought to make it our business to find out why we shouldn't do those things. I think the line that we have defined tonight is your intention? Are you trying to manifest something, and are you doing this ritualistically or religiously? And so for that, we know that is definitely on the line. But why can't you burn the sage? We don't know. So perhaps we need to start looking into that and delivering that information as we get it, so that way we can inform people, and rather than give them shots in the dark. And as far as the witch hunts that you were talking about, I mean, I think sometimes in Israel, the community at large, it seems to always be a witch hunt, not just in who's using herbs, but in mannerisms like I'll see post after post, and I really have to unfollow those people. Oh, these women this, these women that. These women need to be more submissive, and if you're not, you're the witch. You know what I'm saying? So it happens not just in herbs and candles and things like that, but also in character. And I think that we have to understand that the female principle is definitely one that is meant to be diverse, because there's a diversity of men. Therefore, the man not so much of an advocate for himself may need a woman who's more of an advocate for her family. And so, yeah, I think we get into overprotecting, we get into the witch hunt seriously, and we definitely need more information. With that, I yield.
Torah for that. Thank you for kind of making what I was saying more succinct. I appreciate that. I was a little all over the place. I acknowledge that. There was so much going on in my head. So, Anu Malaka, what are your thoughts about maybe, are there times when we are overprotecting? Are we keeping people away from things in all of our great intentions, but maybe there's a place to say, we don't do this because?
No, sis, I don't think we're overprotecting. These are older women that are introducing younger women to practices that are probably not for the younger women because of their maturity level. And this is what I know from personal experience of having these conversations with the sisters, with the young women. What I would say is that I think it's important to understand that the example that I was using concerning a parent wasn't that of a parent who's not educating, instructing, guiding, and helping the child to develop. Of course, you can't just protect a child and never teach them right from wrong, because they're going to be independent at some point where they have to stand on their own. And if they haven't learned how to do so, then you've done them a disservice. So I'm not speaking of just protecting people and telling them, don't do this and don't do that, and you don't have any reason for why you're saying that. I went into great detail in a paper that I wrote recently about why I suggest that we don't burn certain things for certain times. And it is because, culturally speaking, there are ancient customs that indicate that sage in particular was used for the worship of certain deities. And just because of that we might want to refrain until we mature, until we understand fully what we're doing and why we're doing it. Now, as far as the boogeyman and making people afraid or spooked or whatever, people come to me having been spooked and made afraid because of what they
opened up when they started to go down the path. But the problem is that we're really not just talking about someone just burning a simple herb. We're talking about people making a progressive walk towards things that are dark. And it starts with something that they think is simple, innocent, or something that they were even led to participate in by an older woman who was advising them on how to obtain a result that they wanted. I think that it's important to understand that not everyone has solidified their foundation in the Most High. You know, not everyone is secure in their relationship with Him. Let me say that. Not everyone understands Torah fully. Not everyone. I mean, none of us do, but some have more understanding than others. And when I talk about people doing particular things, I most often will speak about people who are really young in their walk with Abba, who are doing things before they've grounded and rooted, established themselves in the faith. And so as far as being protective, I think as older women, it kind of is our role to say, hey, you might not want to do that. That's not wise. Instead, why don't we try this? And as far as prayer being all that you ever do, I think that's foolish to think that anyone would subscribe to just praying and not doing anything within your own power to do. There's a scripture that says without faith, without works, faith is dead. So faith comes moot or invalid. If you want to start a business, you don't just pray about it. You pray about it, you get your credit right, you step out, you start your business, and you pray for help from the Most High, that He bless you, that He prosper you, but you have to do the work. And it's no different in spiritual growth. You can't just burn something and get a desired result. You have to seek growth. And that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about helping young women to be established, grounded, and rooted in the faith before they start to take on these other practices that they may or may not be able to discern are good or bad. I'm not talking about keeping someone in the dark and protected from themselves. People have to learn how to walk. This life is a walk. It's a journey. People have to learn how to walk, and you don't carry a baby around on your hip until they're grown. You put them down and you let them fall and you let them walk. But you have to teach them things that establish and root them and ground them. And perhaps we might all have a different opinion about what grounds or roots or establishes a person, that it is Torah, it is studying Scripture, and that it is prayer. Some others might think that there's different elements to grounding and rooting oneself in the faith. But what I'm coming across is young women who are not grounded and rooted in the faith, who are adding on all of these other things before they are established in their faith, and then as a result, they're progressively walking down a path that takes them deeper into darker practices, until they get to the point where they feel at their wit's end, or at the point where they might actually have a nervous breakdown or might actually succumb to dark thoughts. And so I think with that, I'll yield.
Toda for that. I think a lot of clarity was brought with that last response, because we see here that we're not talking about insulating or isolating the people, and these terms of protection that we're talking about, or that Emunah is referring to, is in response to wherever that person is in the walk, wherever that person is in the faith, and to sounds like to respond to that person based on what they need in the moment, based on who they are as individuals. It's true that we cannot, and it's true that we have an obligation to, at some degree, as older women who know more, to be able to explain away and explain to younger women, and to prevent them from going down paths we know are wrong. And so I think that we all would agree on that, and that it's great to hear some of the clarification about where we're going and some of these conclusions that you've heard on the panel tonight. So I want to thank Emunah for giving that clarity very patiently and very articulate and articulating it. You did. Sister Emunah, what are your thoughts? Do we still have Emunah on the line?
Okay, I'm talking on mute. No, I'm saying the conversation is fine. It's unfolding. You have different perspectives. You have different, you have different places in which those of us who are on the line are speaking from. You know what I'm saying? Different experiences that we're relating to. Sister Malaka is talking about what she's experiencing now and where she's coming from. I'm talking about from where the stance that I'm coming from and contributing to this conversation. Sheikah, only love yourself, Sister Mayana. So you're going to hear similar things that intersect but may sound like they disagree. But, again, when we're talking about, like the question you asked earlier, should we be able and equipped to have these discussions based on where the person is, I would say 100%. Because the reality is, unlike dealing with a child who oftentimes come with a cleaner slate, we're dealing with individuals who come already loaded. You have a computer that already has things on it. It has programming on it. So the approach that you would take when dealing with a child, you can't necessarily take because they've been exposed to things already. You see what I'm saying? And so it's kind of tailored to the person's experience, but that's also to keep in mind that their mind is not necessarily innocent. They may have already begun to go down certain paths. And I agree, sage in this conversation is being used like, again, marijuana, ganja, like this gateway drug, right? And because it's being popularized by a certain segment of society as, listen, like everything that is over here, it's commercialized. But what I attempted to do with what I was researching is to show that this is something that was cross-cultural, including Israel. So now let's look at what it is actually they're doing. But as for the hard and fast of what not to do, if you have an altar in your house, in your room, with pictures and whatever the most and articles from nature, and you might be on the wrong side of the tracks. You see what I'm saying? This is the hard and fast. If you're talking, if you have a stone, stones are like the herbs of the earth when it comes, it's just calcified and it does have energy. But if you're talking to your stone and commissioning it to do things, and that's because, again, when you talk about divination, when you look it up, it has to do with hissing and whispering and pronouncing spells and things into something. This is what you usually see. The depictions that you see in Hollywood, that's what the Torah is concentrating on. You see what I'm saying? That's what it's talking about when you look at it in the way in which it's saying, if you're going to someone because you want to talk to your dead Aunt Susie, you violate it. It's a violation of Torah. It's clear. That's not the fuzzy area. So if we can outline to the people with certainty the clear areas, then we can have more time to say, okay, boom, what's this and this? Because some people are jumping straight into altars. Some people are jumping straight into, you know what I'm saying, dollies that you have you see what I'm saying? That is straight witchcraft. Making charms is straight witchcraft. Altars, bowing down other deities, that's straight witchcraft. You see what I'm saying? Wanting somebody to marry you and you go into the Ubia man, whoever you going, that's straight witchcraft. Burning candles because you want money, you see what I'm saying? So these are some of the things I kind of wanted to throw those things out there because these are like the hard and fast Ubia, Guzum, witchcraft madness. That is also happening. But again, because we grew with these things, I now say this. In the Torah, even in Josiah, which is my favorite one of my favorite stories, because he came in a time where he revolutionized what was going on because they grew up seeing these things and thought nothing was wrong with them. You see what I'm saying? There was a good king and not so good king, and then they had these high places, but they didn't break it down, but they didn't worship on it. And so when they grew up with these things, they didn't think anything was wrong of it. And so this is why I'm big on cleansing, because somebody may not think anything is wrong with it. And so if we come to them and say, hey, listen, having an ancestor table is, what are you doing over there with all those pictures and with candles on that table? Right. You feel me? Then we got to ask questions like, what are you doing? And people are like, well, my granny did it and my great-granny did it. And then now you get to say, let's have this discussion to see what are you really doing and is this permissible? Because it's not just the burning of the sage. There are a lot of things that are going on that have been normalized as it always has in our history. And we have to use Torah as the guideline. And if it's uncertain in Torah, if I haven't shared anything else on this platform, if I'm uncertain, I'm going to say I'm uncertain. You know what I mean? So that I don't lead anyone astray on either side of the club. You know what I'm saying? For your safety, I'm gonna be like, yo, I don't know. Doesn't. So the Torah is silent on it. You see what I'm saying? But if it's clear on it, then we need to bang on the parts that's clear, and then we could come over to the unclear parts and do what we're doing now. So hopefully, for those who are listening, I gave some clear violations. No calling your Aunt Junie, your dead granny. Don't ask her no questions. You know what I mean? Be careful of all of this stuff, because this is what Torah, that's necromancy. That's in the Torah. That's Deuteronomy 18.
While we were thinking that the people were silent on the matter, turns out we've had a caller patiently waiting for the last 20 minutes. My fault. All right. We're going to go ahead and open up the phone line. Sal, let's let the caller share their thoughts.
Shalom.
916.
Shalom, welcome to the conversation.
Shalom, Sister Vayana. It's Ashanti.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good.
We gave you a shout out a little earlier in the broadcast. How you doing?
Oh, I'm doing good. All praise to the Most High for the shout out, and I want to say to you, Mayana, to Sister Emunah, Sister Angela, Sister Only Love, Sheik. This has been a great dialogue here. Very, very good. I do have a question because I've been listening, and I seen the post that Sister Angela put out a while back on the smudging. I read the article that Sister Emunah put out by clearing up the air about smudging and burning incense. So I do have a question, and I'll preface it with this. Tonight is a full moon, and I've seen them on my page. You probably seen them, on your page. They out right now with the crystals, stones, herbs, sage, right now, charging up to the moon. And I do want everybody's opinion on if that's biblically sound to do that. Just your opinion, just your take. I want to give a scripture and see if what's going on right now as we speak is in maybe violation of this scripture. Deuteronomy chapter 4, and I'm going to read from the scriptures, ISR version. Start at verse 14. And Yahweh commanded me at that time to teach you laws and right rulings for you to do them in the land which you pass over to possess. Therefore diligently guard yourselves, for you saw no form when Yahweh spoke to you at Horeb out of the midst of the fire, lest you should do corruptly and shall make for yourselves a carved image in the form of any figure, the likeness of male or female, the likeness of any beast that is on the earth, or the likeness of any winged bird that flies in the heavens, like the likeness of any creature that creeps on the ground, or the likeness of any fish that is in the water under the earth, unless you lift up your eyes to the heavens and shall see the sun and the moon and the stars, all the host of the heavens, and you be drawn away into bowing down to them and serving them, which Yahweh your Elohim has allotted to all the peoples under all the heavens. So again, my question is, what's going on right now as we speak? Would that be violation? Crystals to the moon, bathing in herbs in the bath to the moon, etc., such as that. And I yield. Keep having a great conversation, ladies. Love y'all. Shalom.
We love you too. Thank you so much for that question. Who would like to take the question first? That's a great question.
Yeah, this is Emunah. Shalom, Sister Ashanti. Kane, it's a good question. I think I was talking to Sister Mayana about this earlier. It's about perspective. As it relates to being an astrologer or into astronomy, with reading the stars and for the signs and bowing down to them, right? That would be something different if the person, again, is divining with whatever it is that they're doing. There will be some who saying, I'm not praying to it. I'm not bowing down to it. Do you plug in your cell phone? If you plug in your cell phone to recharge it, their thought is, I'm plugging in this crystal to recharge it. Because their energy, your cell phone has, and this is why I'm talking about being a little educated. I'm not making excuses. I'm sharing some of the research. Within your cell phone is energy. There's something that they mine. They've been mining it out of, is it the Congo? Within Africa, that without your cell phone, it won't work. Right? And so you plug in your cell phone into the wall, into the charger for it to charge when the battery is low. The crystal doesn't have a plug, so they put it outside to charge it by the moon. So there will be some who are saying, I'm not bowing down to it. I'm not worshiping it. It's not my power. Do you understand what I'm saying? And then one would have to say, okay, because when these things, I've done a little research, when these things hold energy, it has to dispel the energy, it has to discharge the energy. You see what I'm saying? And so when the priest, then one would have to ask, when the priest had the 12 stones on his breastplate, which was a form of divination, which probably would be another conversation, right? How did that become cleansed? Because there was ceremonies and rituals that the Most High put in place. Tell Moshe to tell Aaron, this is how you cleanse the sanctuary. This is how you cleanse your garment. This is how you cleanse the tent of meeting. Because anything that's going to be taking in this negative energy has to have a space in which this energy is discharged. So I would say, yes, a large majority of people may be out there doing things for nefarious reasons. But the very principle of what they're doing, we probably have to sit down and say whether or not the principle of recharging something is negative. So that's what I would say. Hopefully I didn't confuse anyone, and I'll relinquish the mic.
Very interesting. Malaka, do you want to weigh in on Sister Shanti's question?
Yeah, I really can't give you an objective response to that answer because it's too close to what I am currently trying to help someone work through. I think that you can do it, but I don't know that you should do it. That's all I can say. I don't think that it is. I think that there's a thin line between worshiping the Creator and the created, and I think that it's easy to step over that place into the worship of the creation instead of the worship of the one who created it. I think that you can utilize things that make you stronger. But I just think that the scripture says that our hearts are deceitfully wicked and who can know it? That's in Proverbs, and maybe somebody can tell me the chapter. Can't think of the chapter right now in the verse. But it says the heart is deceitfully wicked, who can know it? So when you're lighting the candles and you're burning the smudge stick, and I'm telling you stuff that I'm looking at right now on somebody's page, you're doing this in the full moon, and you say that you are bathing in the moonlight. I don't know what's really going on in that person's heart, but I do know that I've seen situations where a person is doing these things, and then a few months later they're calling me and telling me what was going on in their heart. So I just think it's risky business. You can do that. You can bathe in the moonlight, and it's not going to affect you or cause you to, you felt so great. It piqued your curiosity to go a little further until you found yourself completely dependent upon things outside of your L. I think I've said everything I can say about it. And with that, I yell.
Okay. Daughter for that. Ashika, do you want to approach the question?
Yeah, I'm kind of at a loss for all this because I have not been paying much attention to this. But then as I scroll through Facebook, I actually have two friends who are doing this right now from college. And if you don't mind, I would like to read the post from August. To get your mirror magic poppin', pull out your favorite working mirror, light your candles, gather moon water, charge up your crystals, and this time as you say your affirmations/incantations, stand under the moonlight, catching the beams, allowing them to wash over your face to reveal new and powerful insights. Ask the moon's light to show you your true face, your true self, your personal power secrets buried deep within, and keep you in the light of your desires and destiny. Ashe. And so then it says mirror magic work, moonlight, moon magic. So I think it's definitely, I get the charging energy, charging up energy. Is it the prescribed way that the Most High has given us? And so, again, we go back to what we were talking about earlier with the manipulation and the hope for outcome, things of that nature, versus cleaning a space, or versus making a space or creating a menu from the prescribed manner of getting an outcome or result, or at least just being heard. Because I don't think that when you pray or even when you do any type of work in the law that you're something to happen right away, like a manifestation right away. You're putting out the energy that you want to receive. You reap what you sow, okay? But when I read this post, this is the prescribed manner of the Most High in this utilization. I'll say that. With that, I relinquish.
All right, total for that. We're at 10:48 here on Debate Talk for You, and so we have we probably have about 10 minutes. Debate Talk for You has a totally different time frame. So I want to thank Ashanti for that question. I guess everybody wants to know my answer to that. My answer to that is probably somewhere along the lines of what you've heard already from all three of the sisters, beginning with Emunah. This idea of charging the elements, that's not foreign, it's not pagan. It's the fact is that all of these things contain energy and that they do get charged and recharged. My contention would be, and this would probably sound more along the lines of what Sister Malaka is saying, is what do you do next? Once you have your fully charged topaz, what are you going to do with it? Do you know what topaz does? Do you know what it means to have fully charged amber? Do you know what any of that means? Just throwing all of these things out and saying I'm allowing the moon to charge it because it sounds magical and it sounds impressive, it sounds like you're doing something, you don't know what you are doing, because like Emunah says, now that it's charged, it has to discharge. What are you going to do with this energy? Do you know what you're doing? We heard from Sister Sheikah saying, this moon magic, mirror magic, and the like, these hashtag, look how magical I am. Everybody wants to be a unicorn because there is no, and I think Sister Malaka spoke to it, this idea of not being centered in Torah. You don't have a Torah identity, so you're looking for an identity that makes you feel full. And the moon, the bathing in the moonbeams. All right, I won't say that there's no benefit to that, because if I were to say if it wasn't the moon and we're talking about the sun, we understand now that the sun does activate the melanin, and it does activate something. It reacts. Everything that the Most High has created has a purpose. It does something. So acknowledging that it has the ability to do something is not unrighteous. But when you decide that you are going to harness nature in a way that the Most High has not given you permission to harness, and you don't know what to do with it, then this is when I would say that's something that you should not touch. Emunah brought up that the stones that were on the breastplate of the priests, there were one for every branch of Israel, but they knew what to do with it. They can charge those crystals all day long because they knew what they were going to do. It meant something. They knew something. The Most High was dealing with them. If you're not being dealt with, you can charge everything, every element, every mineral. It means nothing. You're doing something very, very weird and probably not good for you. You don't know what to do with it. So with that, those are my final thoughts on that question. I want to thank Ashanti again for bringing the question to the panel for us to unpack. I don't have any of these people, to my knowledge, running around on my timeline. I was hoping to see who on my timeline would be engaged in any of this, but no, I don't. All of the women on my timeline are Israelites, and they're tuning in. So, tell them very much. I see a lot of sisters saying they're tuning in and enjoying the show, and I appreciate you for that. Brothers, I know you're over there somewhere. I'll probably find you in the comment section when Sal puts that on the YouTube. For those of you who do not know, all of the conversations that you hear on Blog Talk Radio are archived on our YouTube channel. That's www.youtube.com, www.youtube.com/Debate Talk for You. If you want to send us an email, you can email us at underthepalm2@gmail.com. Again, your donations are gladly accepted and gratefully accepted via PayPal using the email debatetalkforyou@gmail.com or through our Cash App. You use the $ and South Showtime's name. Thank you for joining us this evening. Unfortunately, I don't have the time to have everyone give their closing thoughts again. But sisters, we have about 5 minutes, so if each of you want to just say goodnight to our listening audience, I'll give you an opportunity to do that. Again, we only have 5 minutes left on the air. Malaka.
Shalom, everyone. Thank you for those who tuned in and listened. I hope that you walked away from this with something to work with in terms of developing your own understanding or your own stance or perspective concerning these things that we've talked about. I hope that you appreciate the passion that you heard, knowing that we are deeply invested in you as our community and that we care. And also, lastly, real quick, I just want to say I'm sorry for misquoting, using the wrong translation on that scripture. That bothers me that I did that. I don't in any way intend to say all things are lawful. I know that that is not correct. But it's just a habit from using that wrong translation. So please forgive me for that. Just wanted to throw that little caveat in there. And with that, I'll say shalom, Leila Tov.
Me too, Malaka. Me too. That's why I said it, because I know I do the same thing. I do the same thing. I'm used to that translation too. That's why I caught it. It wasn't meant to really correct you, but it was kind of something that I know I do myself. Sheikah, you want to go ahead and say good night to the people?
Good night, everyone, and shalom, shalom. In all things, seek the kingdom first, and be transformed by the renewing of your mind. We have these things, and it tempts our flesh. We can definitely, with the faith in the Most High, resist. Okay. Have a good night.
And thank you for joining us, Sheikah. Welcome to the conversation. Thank you for joining the panel. Emunah, you want to go ahead and close us out?
Okay, and all praise be to the Most High, the Holy One of Creation. Thank everybody for tuning in. This is a great conversation. I agree. Seek the Most High in everything that you do. Put the Creator first. Be honest about where you are in your journey. Submit your transgressions and your sins onto the Creator so that the Most High can work that out, because a lot of times that's what we're doing. We're looking to go to different places to try to compensate for or erase or, doing whatever it is that we're doing, running away from what the real issue is. So as we return to the Most High, we must return in humility as well as allow the Creator to cleanse us, right, so that He can heal us and return us and heal our land. So all praise be to the Most High, the Holy One of Creation. And I was going to say one more thing. It is a slippery slope. I did kind of, some would be like, Emunah played the other side tonight. Not really. What I wanted to do was kind of hopefully help to center the conversation, that we understand it's a slippery slope, that we have to be able to address it openly, and we have to be honest in our discussions and where we are. So all praise be to the Holy One of Israel. I missed the imams. Hope that they was here tonight. They weren't, so hopefully they'll be here on the next show. With that said, tune in tomorrow night for a round table.
Oh, that's right. Tomorrow night we're going to have an amazing conversation. So tune in Tuesday at 8 p.m. on Debate Talk for You. Sal, thanks again for the opportunity to meet with the sisters. Shalom, shalom, everyone. Good night. Lila Tov.